It's 7 o'clock and I'd like to call together the February 26, 2026 school committee meeting. If you would please rise and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all. All right, we've got a quorum tonight, so that's good. Elaine's going to be joining us shortly, and then we think Dino's also fighting some traffic and going to be joining us as well. But we'll move through the agenda as planned. So first order of business is the posted consent agenda, which contains the minutes from our February 5th, 2026 meeting, as well as an oath to bills and payroll. Everybody get a chance to read the minutes?
Yep.
Any edits?
Nope.
Good. Is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Motion made by Sean, seconded by Janine. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
That carries. This is our first opportunity for interested citizens. Is anybody with us in the room or on Zoom
There's nobody online.
that would like to speak before the school committee? This is your first chance, second chance at the end of the meeting. All right, we'll close interested citizens. And we've got Siddharth Padamati this evening joining us. Thank you for being here, Sid, who is going to prepare, share with us the student representatives report.
To start, Shaker Lane would like to update everyone that they have completed their pre-K lottery for community peers, and notifications went out to families prior to vacation and deposits are due on Monday. Kindergarten registration is open online. Families are encouraged to complete this registration as early as possible and coordinate kindergarten screenings in May. Regarding Russell Street, before February break, the 5th grade band had a great performance at the All-Town Music Concert. The following day, Russell Street hosted its Mind, Notion, Literacy, and Math event, which was well attended by Russell Street and Shaker Lane second grade families. Russell Street's PTA is hosting the first ever readathon, a big fundraiser for a goal of to read 100,000 minutes and raise $10,000 during the program. All online registration is now open. Russell Street is also excited to bring back Wellness University for the second year. During the half day next week, students will get to choose between several courses focused around health and wellness from teachers and community peers. At the middle school, members of the LHS staff will be at the middle school on Wednesday, the 4th, and on the 8th to guide 8th graders in selecting their classes for the fall. Wilton Middle School will host the Kids Night Out for 6th graders on Friday, March 6th from 6 to 8 p.m. Regarding the high school, on March 3rd, 8th grade parent-teacher course elections will happen from 6 to 7:15 p.m. On March 4th, early release for professional development will occur. On March 5th, the Ball in the House performance will occur during an extended flex block period. On March 13th, the parent-teacher conference for a full day will occur where students will have no school. And finally, on March 18th, Spring Junior College Fair will occur from 6 to 7:30 p.m.
Excellent. Thank you, Sid. Are there any other points of recognition?
Sure.
I'd
I'd like to congratulate Miss Natalie Croteau and she's our technology systems coordinator in the district. She recently received Maya's Health and Wellness Award as the best overall wellness champion. This is not just a district award, it's an award for the town of Littleton as well. So quite an accomplishment. Natalie's recognized for her leadership in coordinating and participating in all on-site wellness committee meetings and programs, filling out and submitting wellness grants for the town and district, and encouraging employees to take part in Maya activities. And I have to say, in the last 2-3 years, we've had plenty of Maya activities in our district for staff to get involved in fitness, learning, cooking lessons, you name it. It's really, really incredible, some of the programs that Maya offers, wellness as well. So with that, we'll be having a follow-up I think March 13th coming up. So congratulations to Mrs. Croteau. Huge accomplishment for the town of Littleton. I should give her
Perfect. Thanks so much. Hockey team had a big win today.
Yeah.
10-0.
It's fantastic.
Nice.
Right. All right. We have a few presentations scheduled for this evening. Welcome to our especially late arrivals. So thank you for joining us. Things happen, we get it. No big deal.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah. You snuck in one after another. So we have two presentations scheduled for this evening, which we're, school committee is very excited to hear about. The first of which is Portrait of a Learner progress. We're going to hear from principals of each school that will update the committee with the progress on the Portrait of a Learner in their respective schools. Well, looks like Principal Kane is approaching the podium. Maybe we're going to go in order from youngest students to oldest.
Sure. I hope I can do this justice. I know I'm gonna sit down and one of these wonderful principals is gonna say something, it's gonna come to me, so I'll try and do the best I can.
Can't steal. That's just it though. You can't steal it all. You gotta leave something from, yeah.
Sure. So, if you could bring up there we go. So this, Portrait of a Learner actually started last year. And just, I know Beth Steele has brought a lot of, information forward to you. So what we have right there, I'll say that we started this with staff meetings last year, so the 24-25 school year. And that's where we created, you can see the 6 competency areas: effective communication, critical thinker, and so forth. And what we did as a staff is we met together, we put these 6 areas up, and we brainstormed what this would look like. Then we took that information and kind of pared it down smaller with our leadership team to kind of say, okay, what is this going to look like? Let's synthesize what everybody thought on sticky notes, Post-its, a paper, and came up with these defining areas. From that, this year, what we have been focusing in on is, in our leadership team, is what does this look like? And I don't have it there, but I'm going to speak to it. It's, we came up with I can statements and reflective prompts. And we did this in a smaller group just to say, okay, what does it mean to be an effective communicator? So we came up with some different I can statements. So a couple of examples of an effective communicator. And thinking of our pre-K to 2, so, 3-year-olds to 8-year-olds, and what will it look like? And you'll hear from everyone as the trajectory goes up to the high school. I can change and grow with new ideas. I can use technology to learn and share ideas. I can use words to solve a problem. So that's what we try to teach, is using our words to solve our problems. I'll just talk about another one, a skillful collaborator. Some of the I can statements we came up with, again, pulling from the skillful collaborator there. What does this look like? I can be a flexible thinker. I can work and play respectfully and responsibly with people and things around me. I can be open to trying new things and ideas of others. So our leadership team, again, took the information under the competency areas, came up with the I can statements. And then, through our admin team meetings, we were then charged with come up with reflective prompts for kids to think about this. So if we go back to effective communicator, how can you be an effective communicator? And we're hoping that over time, the kids will generate some of the ideas that we have of their skillful collaborator. Well, what did you do to work with someone today? And even giving them sentence frames like, when I was working with Michelle, I shared the toy that I was playing with, even though I didn't want to, I shared it. So really thinking about what does the I can statements look like in 3-year-olds' eyes all the way to 8-year-olds, and then what are these prompts that we can say to them so we can pull this information out of them in that language. So we worked on that this year. And we also started to work on what we called magnify the moments. And these are some big learning experiences that are happening in pre-K, in kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade. And one of the things that happened last year when we brought in our new reading program, Wit and Wisdom, one of the things that stands out in my mind that I think would stand out in a 2nd grader if you ask them this year, when they were in 1st grade last year, they wrapped up one of the units, modules, and they had a ball. They had like a Cinderella's ball, and they got dressed in dresses and tuxedos and suit clothes, and they came in and we had like a dance party. Am I remembering all this?
Oh, yeah.
Jim, it was huge. So those are like the magnifying the moments. I would think this year or in past years, it could be something as fun as Winterfest. This year, I think would be the fun run. Kids will remember that and the money they raised, the things that happened. I don't have all of them with me. I apologize. I didn't bring up the magnify the moments, but we did that as a leadership team. So we talked about what does that look like. The leadership team went back to their respective teams. They collaborated and then brought that back to us. And we created that roadmap of what that's going to look like from pre-K to grade 2. So I do feel like we are at the beginning stages. I think the high school's a little bit more further along than us. When, Beth came to us and said, what you wanted to hear is, I think we're at the beginning stages. I know we're at the beginning stages. We look forward to what's coming in the future. And what I see when we kind of wrap this up, I might leave it to you, Colin, to talk about ECC. I don't want to steal too much about like the Cubs and the Tiger names. I have it if you want me to speak to it. But I know we've been working a lot together with Russell Street and the Elementary Curriculum Council. And we have a great visual, some different visuals that are going to mean this. I'll let him share it. They're kind of cute. And what I envision is that when we have this done, when this is defined enough and our staff feels comfortable enough that we're working this into our community meetings, we're talking about these little characters and what it means to be a healthy and well-balanced learner. I'm thinking about creating a trifold for parents so that they know that these are our competency areas at Russell Street, and maybe that's what it will look like, and then transforming as they get older, 3 through 5, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12. So I think that's what I have for Portrait of a Learner. I'm sure I'll remember something later, and if it's important, I'll come back up. Any questions about this?
I just have a quick question. I love the work that you're doing on the 6 competencies and how to make it appropriate for pre-K to 2. So this, it still looks sort of teacher facing. Were you saying that one of your goals is to make the language more student facing so that it's accessible to them eventually? I know you're in the middle of it.
Yeah, no, great
Yeah.
question. So we have been working about some Cub names. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna go, okay. So we are coming up at our ECC, we're coming up with these little tiger cubs, and each tiger cub has a name. So for example, our effective communicator is Enzo, the effective communicator. So we're working with that. We've come up with the names. We've come up with a little visual of a tiger with his t-shirt. I think we talked about the t-shirt would have his little symbol, maybe a hat. CC is the critical thinker. So I think bringing that down to the kid level, yes, definitely more important, where this is more teacher and adult face.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I love that.
So there's
We have Maria, the mindful learner, and we have Sai, the skillful collaborator. He's like, stop! Healthy and well-balanced learner, and we have Ellery, the engaged citizen. So
I love
really cute.
So
Thank
they're like
you.
the letter people
Yes.
from back in the day.
Yeah, so so the kids can,
Right.
like, instead of taking, say me, like a 3-year-old doesn't gonna say.
This means nothing.
Yeah, exactly,
So
but
seeing Ellery up there and talking about Ellery
Yeah.
at a community meeting and what does it look like, and having some of our grade 2 kids do some skits,
yeah.
I think is what we're seeing in the years to come.
So I had another, I have always been so pleased with how mindful we are in this district and have been and in transitions. Like from the time my kids were in school, it's not that long ago. But like transitioning from school to school has been a thoughtful exercise for all, which I think is really important. How does this work into that? Because it sounds like you're thinking about that. And I just curious, like.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to hear from my other colleagues in a minute, but one of our admin council meetings, what we did is we each looked at what other schools came up with, which was a great way for us to reflect that Russell Street had language that looks similar to ours. So we should take that language under these competency areas and word it so that it looks like an easier entry point for our kids, but is more stepped up when it goes up there. So that's one of the things that, I can recall that we did to try and make sure that assimilation into the next grade looks continuous, but a little bit more grown up.
Awesome,
I'm
thank
sure
you.
They'll have something to add to that.
Can you go over the I can statements again?
Yep, so I can send these out to the group. So in each area, so I'll go up to critical thinker. So to be a critical thinker, 3 through 8, great ages 3 through 8, I can be ready to change and try new things because they're critically thinking. I can be a sharp thinker and problem solver. I can be a careful reader and listener. I can be a truth detective and check if pictures, videos, and stories are real or made up. So what we did as a leadership team is we took a lot of thoughts that were coming from the creation of the competency areas, and we're trying to think, what does this look like? Mindful learner, I can prepare my mind and my body to be ready to learn. We talk a lot about that. you know, eyes watching, ears listening, body still with the group. I can be creative and try my best. I can solve problems and persevere. I can try different learning styles. I can be mindful of how my choices affect the world around me. Do you want me to do all of them? Healthy and well-balanced learner. I can take care of my feelings. I can show love and kindness. I can stay calm and be safe. I can keep my body healthy. I can ask for what I need. I can use technology in safe and meaningful ways. And engage citizens. I can look for ways to grow by helping the community. I can celebrate the diversity of our community. I can contribute meaningfully to the support those around me. I can show respect and acceptance towards others, and I can speak up for what I believe in and stand up for what's right. I think if you were to look and ask everyone else what theirs look like, it's kind of the same, but just more grown up, using
Sure,
technology
yeah.
to connect with people around the world.
So by going first, you might get, I mean, I don't know how many questions we're gonna have, or whatever. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know if these are difficult questions. So like, this is what I'm thinking, right? And this is kind of for school committee. So this morphed in from like the portrait of a graduate, which is what do we want our students leaving out Littleton High School to be ready for? What do we want in their toolbox, in their toolkit? And as I'm listening to you talk, and I'm like, Colin would love this, right? Like if all of your students can do all of these things, how hooked up are you?
Yeah, so that's, exactly, that's like.
Right? But so I guess my question for you, Michelle, is I think if we think about sort of maybe the average student coming into your building, I think these statements are really nice, and a lot of the kids probably can accomplish these things. A lot of the students can certainly get better in all of these areas. Maybe you can speak about those that can't.
yeah.
Like if someone was in a situation where the answer is no, as I leave Shaker Lane, I'm actually not going to be able to do one of these things. And I know it's like a bigger conversation and levels of support and all that stuff, but what does that look like in terms of them moving from Shaker? Like, we're not going to hold a student back, obviously, because they can't do these things, but can you speak to what efforts are made so that everybody can sort of check these boxes as they as they move from Shaker Lane to Russell Street?
I think in a utopic world, everyone would check the boxes, but that I don't believe is reality.
Yeah.
So as long as kids are getting pieces from each one. The next part of the presentation that focuses on our focus areas for UDL, we do speak about that. That was our first competency, which was really about this. I feel like at Shaker Lane, we need to build their emotional capacity and their social capacity to even get into stuff that talks more about academics. And things like that. So I just want to make sure I answer your question. What do we do for the students that aren't? Well, we're providing guidance counselor groups, school adjustment counselor groups, meeting times. One of the things you'll see, we came up with a new think sheet this year that really focuses on how my actions have affected others, what I can do, as opposed to just a reflection sheet. What did I do? What can I do next time? We have visuals for students. So a lot of times now we're talking about visuals. I do see a lot of growth from kids that are with us from age 3 to 8. It might not be like a flower that blooms differently. You know, some are blooming quickly and some take time. Putting those supports in, we have our student success team process. If kids aren't progressing, we meet on these students. We set these team meetings up. We set goals. We check in on those goals 6 to 8 weeks. So I think if that maybe answers some of the questions, but I think checking all of these boxes, that would be hard for me to do as a soon to be 50-year-old adult.
Well, I think,
So-
if you really tried hard, I think you probably could. You could hit the age 3 to 8
Yeah.
benchmark.
For me, as a 5-year-old,
Yeah.
6-year-old,
Right, but
Wasn't-
now you're ready.
Yeah.
Now you're saying now you couldn't do it, yeah.
some of the things I see some of our second graders talking
Yeah.
and presenting, I'm like, I don't know that I was that comfortable to talk and present in
Right.
a group, but we're giving them those skills.
Yeah.
We're having them practice those skills.
What I think is interesting
So
that,
if I can jump in on this, and that speaks to what you're saying here, is that the purpose behind it is not for a student to become a master at all 6 of these. But that's utopia, right?
Right.
That's the amazing goal if we can get there. We are gonna have some students who can become proficient. But what is gonna end up happening, what I think John will kind of speak to, is once they're gonna be able to self-identify really strongly
Right,
in one or multiple of these categories.
Yeah.
And for a student realizing, I'm a very mindful learner, but I'm not as much of an engaged citizen. So they can self-identify, I do this really well, I have this skill set really strongly that I'm gonna be able to utilize for myself moving forward. But this is an area that I know I need to work in. And so that's why I'm starting and having these conversations, being able to self-identify where their strengths are and not. So it's okay that they're leaving saying no to certain things, or I can't do that yet.
right.
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in.
No, I get that. And there's a lot of school left. What I think is interesting about it is a lot of these I can statements, like some translate to academics, but a whole bunch of them don't, right? So it's not like these are gonna show up as 1, 2, 3s or 4s on the report card. So, as a district, we're gonna report back to the families what's on the progress report. Does it then become the sort of the staff's responsibility eventually? Like, are we eventually as a district gonna get there to be reflecting on this portrait of a learner and identifying students that need help in certain areas which aren't gonna be on their progress report, so that when you hand them off to Russell Street, you've made best efforts to try to get them as far along this journey as possible?
I think that's a great question. One of the things I know we have on our report card, I think it's similar to Russell Street, is we have HEART, which shows some of these competency areas. And that would be actually interesting to look at, like how close do these match up with our HEART, like sharing,
Right,
collaborating. So I actually want to take a look at that because I think that we have that to a degree. I just don't know how specific it matches up with this.
I think, Beth, to your point, like even, and you said it jokingly, Michelle, but you're right, like be a flexible thinker. I can tell you numerous adults I work with for whom they have a lot of competency, like truly, or like some of these, and like even in workplaces, when we do things like strength finders, it's not that the other competencies are lacking, it's that there's certain strengths that are higher. And so I think to your point, self-identifying which of these competencies are my strengths and maybe which are not, as opposed to I don't have these and I have these, is an important sort of perspective, because surely in some scenarios there's flexible thinking, but maybe that's something that's not a real strength, but the, engaged citizen. And so I think that that's very true. Like to have all the competencies all the time is maybe not the goal, but for them to be able to figure out what their competencies are and grow in the others.
Yeah, so true. I also envision some of a portfolio approach that's transferred from school to school. So you can build upon what you see at Shaker Lane to Russell Street and then to middle school and high school. By the time, by the time they're at high school, then I know John is already looking at students showcasing some of the areas that they feel that they really shine in as well. And then we would in turn showcase those areas as well.
Can you share?
Yeah,
so, okay. Yeah.
I want to
Go for it.
Well, I thought what might be helpful is, right, Michelle was sharing some of her I can statements and how they might translate as students move and progress up at least to Russell Street. So do you have your critical thinker? Your I can statements for critical thinker? And then we can just show kind of that vertical work that we've already started as an admin team in the schools. So critical thinker, yeah, go ahead.
So critical thinker, I can be ready for change and try new things.
Okay, try new things and be prepared to adapt and change.
I can be a sharp thinker and problem solver.
Solve problems creatively.
I can be a careful reader and listener.
Use reliable evidence to form opinions and make decisions.
I can be a truth detective and check if pictures, videos, and stories are real or made up.
Analyze media and sources to know if they can be trusted. Right? So like they're like
that one's totally staged.
So, well, that's the but that's
You guys have been working on that.
Like, no, but as she was saying, talking about critical thinker and Shaker Lane, I was like, oh yeah, it's nice that we're kind of a sandwich school, that we have a school below us and above us, like schools above us, because these I can't say it's really all started from, right, we want a backwards map and backwards plan, and we've had portrait of a graduate from all the NEAS work at the high school, so we used those to start with, and then thought about, okay, developmentally, what is appropriate and like reflective of what we want our
pre-K to second graders to be able to do versus when they come up to the third through fifth graders and then up to Jason and up to John. So like, that's just a really quick example of like that vertical trajectory. The other thing I want to add is a lot of the things that I have on here are
Same.
very, very much similar to what Michelle mentioned, but to the superintendent's point about this portfolio aspect of how do we measure, right, mastery of some of these things. And that, I think, is where we might not show up on a report card, but that's why we've been working really hard on identifying these magnified moments, which is something that Russell Street has also done this year. And you can see on my slide, in a staff meeting, I got all the teams together and said, all right, just give me the laundry list of all of the magnified moments that you can think of, but not only like just the fun stuff that students may do, but how are those moments tied to those 6 competency areas? So that way we can see, okay, throughout Russell Street, students have X number of opportunities to show that they are an engaged citizen, or to show that they are a healthy and well-balanced learner, or to show that they have, skillfully communicated through whatever project or assignment that they are doing. So by the end of their time at Russell, every school, we have a roadmap where they can self-identify and say, okay, here are the things that I've done that are really memorable and really impactful for my time there. And I can track myself of, by doing this and having the opportunities to express or to, share what they've learned, I can now reflect on how I am one of any of these 6 competency areas. To tie that into the UDL framework also, all of those magnified moments are very different and can touch, and can be approached by students in very different ways based on their strengths or areas of growth. So they might have a magnified moment that they might struggle with a little bit because that's not really their strong suit, or they're still working on those skills. And they might have a magnified moment that is right in the wheelhouse and they're able to show those competency areas really well. And I mean, throughout 13 years of school at Littleton, they're going to have lots and lots and lots of those opportunities to show those 6 areas, those 6 competency areas through those magnified moments. And that's like the real good stuff where we can say to a graduate, remember that thing you did when you were in kindergarten, and see how it tracked how you were an engaged citizen all the way through.
Right.
So I have a quick question about that. I love the calibration. This is so fantastic. With these magnified moments, are the teachers identifying that for students and saying, look, here's a magnified moment. This is a moment to reflect on which of the competencies you just displayed, or and maybe this is a question for all the principals, but growth over time, do they become more and more independent with identifying those moments for themselves?
I can speak to where I think Russell Street is right now, is we are just at the beginning stages of identifying what those moments are for ourselves as a staff, so that we can say, hey, we have lots of magnified moments for health and wellness, or healthy and well-balanced students, right? But we might not have as many magnified moments as we thought about, engaged citizen, or whatever the case may be. So then that gives us the opportunity to say, okay, now we recognize that we need to find some more opportunities and avenues where we can have magnified moments in this specific competency area while students are here at Russell Street. So we're still in that stage of all right, let's level set and see where we're at currently, so that we can know where we need to grow and what we need to kind of continue to do
Yeah, that's so great. I mean, I think that's part of the power of this initiative, is the impact it can have on curriculum and instruction. Because to your point, if you see that, maybe you're not providing as many opportunities for engaged citizenship, that maybe that needs to be built into the learning. So I'm very excited.
That's part of the future that I looked into, that we say, once we're out of the staff zone, we can get into the kid zone and connect it once we're pretty confident as.
And we have a tiger test ready.
Yeah.
I love how closely you're working together. It's
Yeah.
so important for pre-K to 5 to have that continuity. So thanks for the extra effort.
While I'm up here, any other questions for Russell Street?
Yeah, okay, well, actually, I think for both of you too, I so appreciate this as sort of going hand in hand with when we talk about UDL and academics. It's almost like grounding values through which everything else flows. And I think just a suggestion, if you're in the editing phase, and if you're not, feel free to ignore, but especially for the younger children, where they can also, because so many of these are I can, or their ownership, or their doing, but also I can ask for help when I need it, or I can go to an adult or something that's, I don't know where exactly that falls, or it's like a little nuance somewhere, because that also feels
Yeah.
appropriate for that
A
age.
lot of the,
Sure.
Yeah.
standards and the frameworks for younger grades start with prompting and support. I
Right,
found.
right.
So I think there's a lot of that baked into a lot of the work that we do with some of our.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's like, obviously you're not, you know, the expectations for that age. And then the other one I was thinking about too is like, I can persevere through failure, whatever the right wording of that is, of like, you don't have to be at this level of perfection all the time, but like even failure, and then it talks about risks and stuff, but like what sort of failure can teach us, or what doing things wrong, or what, you know, like mistakes, like all of that too. I was just thinking about that as I was reading
It's powerful. Failure is part of learning, so.
it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, specifically, Colin, on your slide, you have, ask for what I need as,
Yeah,
As a way.
as a way for your
Oh,
first
yeah.
point. And then, you know, so that other like failure thing, I think maybe that somewhat gets addressed in this health and well-balanced learner, which is be aware and manage my feelings.
Yep.
Like, not everything's gonna go perfect.
Yeah.
You know, how does it feel or how do I get through disappointment or,
Mhm.
so, yeah, it's really
Yeah.
lots of that work, and I think.
good stuff.
Really
Great.
great work. Yeah, thank you.
It's like,
You know, big picture wise too, I think like as we get up to the high school and stuff, like even at the middle school level, like you get your course load, you get your, you know, and you're like trying, you know, I think maybe for most students, you know, they're trying to do as well as they possibly can in their courses. And then the course closes and they earn their A or their B or whatever it is. And it's like, now what? And it's like, you know, when you graduate Littleton, now what? Okay, I go on to college, now what? This idea of Portrait of a Learner is like the fact that the pursuit of education is a lifelong assignment. And as you enter a professional career, whatever you decide to go into, you sort of constantly have to try to get better to just hang with the competition. So to identify where their strengths are and where their weaknesses are and where they can pivot in life and you know, where they'll be successful. Like maybe not everyone wants to earn an A in every single class, but I guarantee you everybody wants to be successful in life. And you can be successful in life without earning an A in every single class, right? We all know that. So yeah, this is good stuff. Thanks.
Real quick, I know you talked a little bit about small groups and so on. Can you talk a little bit how like students are working together to identify some of these moments and working together to kind of achieve these things? It's like, it's great to have the individual journey, but I know a lot of what from other conversations you guys have had with us, a lot of this is trying to build like small coalition to kind of pull us together.
Yeah, I think the getting the student involvement is really the next critical step that we have to work through, because, you know, it's funny, some of the magnified moments that our teachers identified based on the excitement of the students would not have been, I think, what the teachers would have expected, right? Like fractions in fourth grade is like a huge magnified moment for students because it's exciting and they've heard about fractions or multiplying or divide, like whatever it is. So I think getting that student perspective is really helpful, because there may be some things that are magnified for kids that we might not recognize as the adults. So getting their voice is really important too.
I think that would be really neat at the end of this year, just to do a little writing activity for the kids, because I know we won't be done with this year. Just say, what was your best part about pre-K this year? What was the best part about being in Mrs. Mammus's class? To see what they say, to hear their voice. So that, I think we're gonna take that on, Sean.
Good.
What was the best part about first grade this year in Miss Ducey's class? Yeah, to see what they say. Get that right now.
I got
Okay. So I'm thinking, but I don't have a pen.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm
Awesome.
ready
Thank you.
for the next
Thank
one. Oh, I
Right.
feel like we're hogging the
Thank you.
stage.
Just making it easier for everybody else.
Yeah, thank you.
So, okay. Oh,
No,
sorry.
no, middle school, you're
It's,
good.
bye-bye.
My side.
The Shelby cases.
School committee's always tough. Switching up.
You know, at the middle school, I don't know how much I'm gonna add that's entirely unique, because really, this is really about continuity. And so you're gonna see some of the same things. I'll just kind of speak to the framework that we're approaching it at the middle school level. Really starting sort of big picture and then filtering it down into the individual student experience. So, like Michelle talked about being sort of in that teacher phase, you mentioned, teacher facing. That's really where we are. Part of this, it occurred to me the other day is, there's the portrait of a learner, but there's also the part that we don't have a slide for, and it's the portrait of a teacher. And for many educators, this is just as new as we're asking some students. We have people who've been teaching 20 years, and there's been a lot of different models and a lot of different whims that have come through education. And so, getting teachers to really assess where they are in that path is really important. And so some of this does apply to having to sort of rewrite some traditions and routines and habits that, that have been a certain way for a long time. And so the approach we're taking is to start at the big level. And so with, working with our staff, really identifying the capacity for independent work. When we sat down to talk about these competencies, many of the same ones that came up were the same ones that I remember talking about 25 years ago when I started teaching. Kids need to be critical thinkers. They need to work independently. They need to do this and they need to do that. But one of the things that always occurred to me as a teacher was that we don't ever really take the time to show them what that looks like. Study harder, work harder. But if a student doesn't know what good study habits are, just saying study more isn't really the thing. I can't count how many times kids would say, man, I studied for 2 hours last night, but having the book open on your lap while you're watching TV is not studying. So I think it's important that at the middle school level that we're really developing some of these very specific skills so that not only can they be successful, but they can build on what they've learned at the elementary level and prepare them for moving forward. So really identifying, what does independent work look like for an 11-year-old coming to Littleton Middle School? What does independent work look like for a 14-year-old about to leave for the high school? Because they're very different things. And so really identifying not only just as a school, but also within the different grade levels, what does this look like? Where should we be? And then within that, what are the scaffolds? What are the different areas? Justin, you mentioned for those kids that can't, right? It's not going to look the same for everybody. So then how do we make sure that we are appropriately bringing everybody along with the same level of progress, even though they may not necessarily be, all at the same place when they get done. So really sort of identifying what that independence and what that critical thinking looks like, and then really focusing, okay, so how do you practice this in the classroom? And so that's where we get down to the slightly more nuanced part of it. So I challenged the staff at the very beginning to really work on, and I know we talked about it here at an earlier meeting, about really focusing on customized assessments where students get to pick and choose, but it isn't Montessori style where kids can just say, I want to do this or I want to do that. There's a framework and there's a structure to it. But within that is the freedom to be able to create and to identify what they think mastery or proficiency of something looks like. And that right there is the real difficult part of critical thinking, getting students to be able to say, like, this is what it looks like, right? Because so many students are used to, I'm going to move information from column A to column B, or I'm going to see this exemplar and that's what I'm going to create. And it takes that personal part out of it. So what we really want to do is flip that to be able to say to students, like, so what does it look like to you? Does it meet the criteria? Does it have all the things? And some of this stuff, will come up in the UDL presentation as well. And so really getting to this idea of students being able to show what they know in a way that engages them and interests them, but also still meets the criteria that we need to be able to say it meets in order to say that you've gained mastery of this and you're ready to move on to the next part of it. There is a part of that Venn diagram where these things do overlap, and that's the spot that we're really going to be trying to move towards as we move further through this year and into the coming years. One of the other things too that we want to focus on as we look at these competencies, and this is something that is critically important in middle school, is the idea of in-class brain breaks, getting students to recognize that they need a break, but not the escapism of, I need to go out and get a drink. I need to go take a walk. I need to go, sit in the lobby for a few minutes, but really to say, okay, I recognize that I need a break, but I got to be able to sit here and do it. How can I sort of disconnect for a minute so that I can re-engage? Because once we've lost them to the hallway, we've lost them, and trying to get that back is a very, very difficult task. And so part of the work that we want to do is not just asking teachers to really think about how they structure their classes, but also asking students how they structure the class for themselves. Are there moments where they can step back and look at that? And that's going to take some training, and that's going to take some thought and some professional development on how to effectively have students access in-class brain breaks. And so that's the teacher's student part of this. And then getting down even more so focusing on student experiences, really like around enhanced leadership opportunities, getting kids to be citizens of the school and of the community. So for example, this year, we've enhanced our student council, we've added a spirit club. Kids wanted to do this, newspaper club, getting kids to invest in the community itself, to get to know each other, to talk about it, to lift each other up, to build the culture, see what's working, what can we identify, so they become a part of that. And in a perfect world, if all of these things come together, they hit on all of these 6 competencies. They're not just each their own, they really are touchstones for all the other as well. And so that's really where we want to live at the middle school level, is getting kids to not just be able to work independently and think critically, but to know what that is. If I ask the student, what does it mean to think critically? I want someday to be able for them to say, it means this, this, and this, right? Without me having to tell them it means this and this and this, because they've discovered it for themselves. Because my answer might look different than your answer versus Kelly's answer. And so that's where we want to be. And so that's the portrait of a learner that we are starting with in terms of just that structure of building the capacity at the school level, the teacher level, and eventually the student level.
Great. Questions or comments?
So each teacher is tasked with a lot of content to teach.
Yes.
In addition to, now we're talking about, beyond content and so much. I've seen the model where students in about this age have a completely separate class seminar on how to study, learn, organize, how to start to have to really take control of their executive function. And it's different for everyone. And one of the advantages of stepping it out away from the content is I think they were able to truly create a situation where students felt comfortable having different executive function comfort levels with different ways of organizing and evaluating. And that's a lot to ask of a teacher who is also tasked with making sure content is presented. What do you think that this is like, that's something that we should think about? Do you think we've got it without having a completely separate kind of seminar way of helping students start? And I think your schools is the great time and place.
Yeah.
To start working with students on this is how your particular executive function is going to flourish. I mean, that was the joy of really laying it out there. And I'm just like I said, as I'm thinking, I'm like, that's a lot for teachers, and because they've already got a job. And so
in a perfect world, we would be able to have something like that. I went to school years ago where they took one of the unified arts blocks for the first half of the year and they turned it into like a welcome to middle school block. And really all that block was to really help to train students on what does it mean to be a middle school student, right? What does it mean to work? The executive functioning, how do you manage your things? How do you manage your time? Because, our students all of a sudden have 10 teachers now who have equal sets of priorities and expectations, and they don't have somebody to put things in a folder for them and to make sure that everything is there. The communication home isn't the same like it once was. And so it really becomes thrust upon the students to be independent, even if they're not ready for it.
Yeah.
And so I've kicked that idea around for a while. I don't know how I could implement it effectively given, the time that we have in the course of a school day. And finding the staffing to do that. But what we could try to do, if this is working well, it's sort of woven in. So this idea, when I first started teaching, backwards planning was all the rage. You can see in what I'm doing here, you can tell the influence of where I started is now, upon me as an administrator. Starting with the end of what does this look like, right? And how do I know this works? And then working backwards from there. And if we can get our staff to do this with fidelity, then I think some of what you're talking about is woven in. Because what'll happen is as a student tries to imagine, okay, this is what my final product looks like. How much time do I have? What materials do I need? What are the obstacles that I'm going to overcome? What do I need to do to address those?
Yeah.
And that's part of that executive functioning that you're talking about. How do I do this if I play sports or I'm in drama or home is just not conducive for me getting work done? These things come up, and that's all a part of that success.
Yeah.
So while we don't necessarily have the capacity right now to offer something separate, a separate sort of block to say, here, I'm going to teach you this so you can then take it and transfer it here.
Yeah.
If the work that we do is the way I would love to see it, some of this stuff will be embedded naturally, and the kids will become proficient at it without us having to say, now we're going to talk about time management, because it's going to be done individually on a project by project basis, teacher by teacher, and that may look very different, where some teachers are going to be much more hands-on and guiding, others might be much more, I'm not the disseminator, I'm the facilitator. And that's where we're going to have to see that happen. And that's on me then to make sure that I'm providing my staff with what they need to be able to have those conversations, to think about that in their lesson planning, and to be mindful of that, to say, I'm going to build in an opportunity for us to have a discussion as a class around time management.
Yeah.
And okay, this project we have 2 weeks. What do you need to get done? How might you manage your time and get the kids to really be invested, rather than saying, here's a stack of graphic organizers, go to it.
Yeah.
Really helping kids to really think about how those can be beneficial and resourceful for them, and to use them effectively rather than us telling them how to do it. We need them asking, how can I do it?
And keeping in mind, I mean, this was, some kids needed a box, some needed a folder, some needed, I mean, and that was the joy of having a little bit more, time. It was almost like a nicer place. And yeah, so I feel for the teachers, and if there's any way if physical things might also help, if all the classrooms had a couple different kinds of organizers, or you guys know this better than I do, but I'm just feeling for, this is absolutely leads into that kind of development, right? And it seems like your schools, that's where that starts to happen, and it's really difficult.
It is. Because for some students, that independence and asking, so for example, I was going to talk about this later, but I can talk about it right now. So we have some teachers who are early adopters of this idea of this student customizing.
Yeah.
And what we found is that when you give kids these choices,
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised how many of them said, can I just write a test? Can I just do a slideshow? They are resistant to the students because they just want to stick with what they know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I just want to take a test
Yeah.
and not think about it again.
Yes.
And that right there is a big part of it, because, students all over the country, that's how they've been trained, right? You're
Yeah.
going to study for a test.
Yeah.
You're going to show all this, you're going to show what you know, and then we're going to move on. And that what was committed to short-term memory is now gone forever. How do we reverse that? And so how do we get kids to want to engage and say, listen, I'm going to try something that is a little bit harder. It is a little bit more creative, and I don't fully know how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to try it. That's a huge leap in middle school.
Yeah.
That takes a certain amount of security and confidence
Mhm.
that some don't have. And so that's a part of how we bring that along. And over the course of 3 years, we hope to move as far as we can, and then let John take it.
And the middle school model is really designed for when you're talking about the middle school has the luxury of having grade level meetings every day.
Mhm.
So what Jason was really talking about is having the teachers embed these skill sets,
Mhm.
common skill sets that they've identified that the students need, specific to executive functioning.
Mhm.
They have the time to
Mhm.
do it, and that was part of the power of coming up with a middle school concept in terms of how do you offer middle school education in a fashion that focuses on the development of the whole child.
Mhm.
So I think there's lots of opportunity there, and I know Jason is taking advantage of it.
Yeah, so for example, again, I was gonna say this a little bit later, but we started taking one team meeting a month,
Mhm.
an admin meeting that we meet with the team, and really using that to focus specifically on these things.
Mhm.
And I'm modeling for the teachers what I want them to do for the kids, right? So we're starting with what is a customized experience look like in your classroom?
Mhm.
Okay, now, as a teacher, what do you need to work back from there? So our latest discussion was around exemplars, which we'll talk about in a minute. And what does that look like? Because if you ask most teachers what an exemplar looks like, they can tell you, I'm gonna pull up some old student work, I'm gonna find something on the internet that's gonna show, and this is what I want it to look like. But so many kids then just say, okay, I'm copying that, and you get 25 iterations of the same thing, but none of them really tap into that thing that they're gonna remember.
Yeah.
So even having discussions around what does an exemplar look like? Does the teacher have to create it, or can the student create their own? And this is the part that's been a little bit controversial in my conversations, is getting teachers to, there is a control part of it. You know, and it's not just our teachers, this is everywhere, to say, listen, I am gonna let a student decide what this is gonna look like.
Mhm.
And that's hard for some people.
Mhm.
For some, it's not. They can just say, listen, go to it and I'll be there to guide you. For others, you know, because they have a vision of what they want this to look like. So there's a part of this unlearning in terms of just what we believe to be true, you know, in our own education lives. And so many of us, you know, went to school at a time that was very different than what we're going through now. And so there's that part too, right? And so, you know, we have teachers, you mentioned the content level, but there's also a shifting dynamic just in terms of how we approach students in class, for mental health and social emotional learning. Like that's a big part of something that we didn't necessarily pay as much attention to. Yeah, for so many years.
Oh, yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I'm so happy to hear the thought that's going into this and thank you for this exchange. I'm really
No, thank you
encouraged.
for the question. I appreciate it.
I have a question, back to the portrait of the learner. So when I was looking through the slides in the packet, one thing stood out to me with your slide was the focus on capacity for independent work.
Mhm.
And when you were talking about that earlier, you were talking about the students identifying what that looks like. So I'm curious, since this is sort of a unique focus for the middle school, what you think capacity for independent work is all about.
Because it's so many different layers, right?
Yeah.
I can't get.
That's why I'm asking. I
Yeah, I
want to
can't
find
give
out
you
what
one
layer is the one that you're thinking of the most when you're highlighting it in this project.
If I had to describe one, it's not one that you could enumerate, it's not one that you could measure necessarily, but I do think it comes out, and I think there's a confidence part. If you were a student in my class and I gave you a task, is your first thing to throw your hand up and say, I don't get it? Right, as a former math teacher, how many times do you go over something and the kids immediately like, I don't understand, right? So I had a math coach when I was teaching, she would say things like, for the first 5 minutes, the first 10 minutes, you don't answer a single question for a kid. Let them struggle. Because if they don't, they're never going to learn to deal with that. So if you ask me to, in a nutshell, what's the one single thing that I would say connects 6, 7, and 8 in terms of that capacity for independent thought, it's that ability to say, I can do this, I can struggle productively, and I can come out the other side. And then I know what to ask. Then I know what to advocate for.
Oh, okay. So
Right.
that helps me
Which
see
is-
how it connects with
Yeah.
these other things, because it's really taking a risk.
Mhm.
Not, to Beanle's point earlier, like not being afraid of failure,
Right.
that, productive struggle,
Yeah.
all of those things. So that's why I wanted to tease that out a little bit, because sometimes like when I see the word like independent work, I'm thinking, oh, well, that sounds like kids working in isolation and not collaborating
No.
on teams, because that's another meaning of that word,
Sure.
because best practice now is all about student discourse and discussion protocols and being an active listener and
Yep.
building on the ideas of others. So all of that, are the benefits of collaboration. So I think it's a little, using the word independent work, I think it.
It probably doesn't sell though.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
Concepts.
fine. I think some of the words in these, I'm drawing a blank.
Competencies.
Competencies. Wow. I don't know where that
That's all
went.
right.
Some of the words in the competencies are directly connected to what you mean by independent work. And I
Yeah.
hope the students know what you mean when you say that it's.
Yeah, we're not giving them just saying, hey, listen, here's a packet, go work independently.
Right.
That's a very, very.
Yeah, that's
To me, that's
so
just as
cool.
mindless and
Yeah.
thoughtless
Yeah.
as anything. It's really about saying, because even within a team setting, right? Even if you're working with a group, there are elements of independent work that have to happen. I have to be able to be responsible for my part, right? Because other people are depending on me to do that. So, we can find ways to, talk about the vocabulary but
Right.
I think.
So what you want to avoid is the learned helplessness.
Yes,
Yeah.
if I can eliminate that,
Yeah.
or at least reduce that,
Mhm.
we've moved a mountain.
Mhm.
Because part of that, Michelle and Colin talked about it too, around kids being able to advocate and describe what they need. If they have that there and we continue to build on it here, then they can do that, and that confidence will come, and that helplessness won't come, and maybe that hand doesn't go up right away. Maybe they're willing to give it a try, because for some kids, even just trying is a risk. And so many kids that try once, doesn't work, I shut down. How do we get them to try again?
Yeah.
And that's the part.
And then the other question I had was, so Colin had mentioned earlier that he's a sandwich school. So he's trying to calibrate with the school below him and the school above him, and you're a sandwich school as well. So are you finding opportunities to calibrate with Colin and with John on making your can-do statements fall in that continuum?
Colin and John and I, we haven't sat down to really say like, okay, what does this look like 5 to 6 and what does this look like 8 to 9? I'm sure we'll get there at some point in
Yeah.
time. I think right now we're just developing that groundwork of being able to say, what are the skills that we want to be able to see students leave with, even if they don't recognize them in themselves yet. And I think if what we do works well, they won't necessarily recognize it as, oh, I hit one of the competencies. It's just, this is what I do. It just becomes an afterthought. And so at some point in time, we'll sit down and we'll talk about what does the high school need from us, right? What are the competencies that they need? What are we working on? And then what's the gap in the middle
Yeah.
that we can target?
And how will the middle school students recognize those can-do statements as being aligned with what they knew from Russell Street?
Yeah, those are conversations that I'm sure we'll
Yeah.
have. with Susan.
Yeah, I think that's the power of this initiative, is the district-wide
Mhm.
continuity, that students will start to become aware of these competencies. I remembered it this time.
There you go.
And that it won't have to be retaught at every school. So,
Right.
but thank you very much.
Right. Well,
Yeah, and
go
to
ahead.
build off of what you just shared, Elaine, too, like I appreciate that framing, because it's the work independently, it's almost like I will figure out how I work best independently. To your point and to Janine's point about like learning these skills of executive functioning and sort of where that support can exist. And then tying back to the Russell Street Middle School, and you've shared this before, Jason, how like middle school is such a unique time, so many changes happening. And so there's this like health, wellness, as much as social emotional exists in Shaker Lane and Russell Street, exists in middle school
Yes.
so much in a very different way. So there's this, to your previous point about the confidence as the lens, it's like being confident to advocate for yourself, being confident to, navigate some of the complexities too. And I think that now that you've like said that, I'm like reading some of these through that lens, which is. really
And it's such a strange juxtaposition in middle school where you have students who crave attention from peers and adults.
Yeah.
It's the thing they want the most, yet they're never more isolated than they are
Yeah.
between 11 and 14. And so figuring out how to work between those two worlds, when we bring them together, it's a beautiful thing. But it is something that we address, and it's always been a middle school thing. How do you use one to help the other? And so that they create this symbiotic relationship where my independence is my strength, and I can bring that to the group,
Yeah,
right? And a lot of kids just aren't ready for that yet. But that's where we have to then teach that and build it and practice it and practice and practice.
yeah. And so much of their ability to do a lot of these things is tied in with the social piece. In middle school, right? It is just inextricably like.
I don't know, it's without that part, but I think the effective teacher knows how to use that in
Yeah.
class and how to bring the social component in, because they know that that's what is the driving factor for some students. But then there's the flip side of it. But if you don't do it right, then it just turns into 4 friends hanging out,
Yeah,
wasting time.
yeah,
And that, is real too.
yeah.
So it requires a certain amount of mastery on the part of an educator to be able to navigate that, to recognize when there's productive work happening. I was in
Yeah.
eighth grade, our eighth grade ELA classroom a couple of days ago, and the kids were working on hexagonal thinking, and listening to 2 students argue with each other over this one particular topic was fascinating, because they were both so passionate.
Mm,
And those aren't the things that you don't see, that level of discourse when kids are just reading an excerpt from a book
mhm,
and then providing a summary based on what they think.
mhm.
Those opportunities. So that was a master class. And how do I use that social part
Yeah,
to have kids be able to not only talk, but to challenge each other
Yeah.
And they were definitely challenging each other's thinking. It was great.
Yeah, so I appreciate you talking about Portrait of an Educator, because that's just as important.
I didn't mean to add another initiative on top of all this. Any teachers watching, sorry. It was just a,
Yeah, no, don't circle anything, but that's
Yeah,
an
yeah.
important conversation to have. Is to even be talking about this, we have to be talking about the muscle of educators. To be
Yeah.
able to-
it's part of what we're supposed to do as administrators, but we don't necessarily always sit down and think of it in terms of something like this. Where
Yeah.
If we had something like that, then there's a program that we say, but
Yeah,
in time.
I mean, you could use it as like a interviewing, hiring,
Oh, definitely.
Just
Great.
saying.
Yeah. I'll write a book about it and come back and charge you $10,000.
There you go.
As a consultant. Anything else?
Sure. Like, all good stuff. Great comments. Janine, I found it, and Elaine, I found it sort of fascinating, like the fact that the two of you went back to back. And I think really you were kind of sort of in the end, sort of talking about the same thing as it relates to this developing student capacity and independent work.
Mhm.
And that's like sort of where it starts to take place in middle school. Like the middle school model is very different than the K to 5, yet it's
Right.
still different to some degree than the high school
Mhm.
model.
Mhm.
I mean, because it becomes the real deal in
Yeah.
high school.
Right.
In this developing student capacity independent work, I sort of think of that as like the guardrails that
Yeah.
we provide
Yeah.
in that K to 5 model, where it's like you're very much in the bubble. You're in the nest. Yes, we're not going to master everything.
Yep.
And Dr. Harrington would thank you if you could get the guardrails off everyone, right? So that everyone is, shows up to high school like completely independent and ready to, crush it. But that's not going to be the case for everybody. But to spend some time, I don't know if it's in Flexbox or, during I know that health's got its own curriculum and all that stuff, but to maybe spend some time, back to Janine's point,
Yeah.
carve out some time, maybe in the health program to talk
We have our
about.
advisory time too,
Yeah,
that we can sort of.
advisory.
There is time built in, it's just we don't have like, let's say 40 minutes to really
Yeah.
get rich.
But like you were saying, weave it in, chunk it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Student ownership, so that by the time they're through the middle school, they feel totally confident for high school.
And one of the things that I really haven't really sat down to try to figure out, but I should. When sixth graders come in, they're so excited about learning. You could give them anything and they just think it's the greatest thing because it's all so new and so different. And by 14, they become a little more jaded and you really have to sell it in order to get that same level of engagement. But if we could tap into that in sixth grade and just make that the way things are, then maybe some of that carries over. So we're not having to really put on the dog and pony show to get eighth graders to buy into something that really is hugely impactful for them moving forward. And so if we embed these things now, then maybe they'll carry and the load, the lift won't be as much,
Yeah.
this time in their other eighth grade year.
Yeah.
Great.
Backpack morning.
Yeah.
Okay, unload it.
Uh-huh.
What's in there?
Exactly. And now some kids are used to that and they really need that. Some kids thrive when they get to middle school because of the independence.
Yeah.
That was the thing that they just really struggled with at elementary and now they have it and they do well, and others, they don't do so well with it. And so we really have to think about it case by case.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
It's different with every single kid.
Yeah.
Every single person works in the workplace with our professional peers.
Exactly. Exactly.
I was wondering, so you highlighted some of the clubs and I think it's great that you have these opportunities. In talking to teachers previous in the year, I know some of the busing changes, which I'm for, but there's no late bus anymore and so it's a little more difficult. How is that kind of playing out as far as access to clubs at this point for a student?
That when COVID took that bus from us, it hurt because, we have students who, would love to stay after, but transportation is an issue, especially weather like this, where it's just not going to happen. Our families have responded very, very well. So, when we do have students, we're able to work with families to make that. There are plenty of times where I walk out at 4:00 and there's students still in the building and I'll sit and wait until rides come. We try to be flexible with families to say listen, it's so important that a child stays after to get this extra help. Yeah, the convenience of the late bus certainly made it easier, but we work with what we have. And so, most of our families have been able to find workarounds so their students can participate. And that just speaks to the strength of this community, because that that doesn't happen everywhere, you know, listen, sorry, you can't. We don't really have that, you can't. So many of our families figure out a way to make it happen. So we haven't had to really face it in a way that some other places might. But yeah, the convenience, you know, was there, but you know what, we found ways to overcome.
Great, thank you.
You bet. Anything else? Great, we're good.
No.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Last but not least,
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Bill.
I do appreciate Janine's comments and bringing up executive skills. That's something that's come up even particularly in the ninth grade, a focus on study habits. And one of the things we've thought about, it's a staffing and scheduling issue to some extent, but we would have to think about, we've thought about, instead of study halls, maybe a freshman seminar, even just for a semester or a term. There are different designs that work at the high school level. It certainly would benefit from having something like that in the middle school when the kids come up more, maybe even more ready, but they're still developing in that ninth grade year. They're just couple months out of middle school. So that has come up. I just wanted to acknowledge that. You'll see in front of you, Portrait of a Learner at the high school, something you've seen consistent. And I want to point out that we spent significant time at an admin council meeting back in 2024. It was the admin retreat, talking about a through line. So it is present. You can see the same competency areas and the same language. It's all purposeful. But if you look at just the I can't statements, that have been mentioned, these skill areas underneath, I'll just highlight the critical thinking since I think there was an emphasis on that a little bit. You can turn that in. We have student reflection sheets as part of their preparation for their presentations, which I'll explain a little bit. You can turn that into an I can statement. Under critical thinking, I develop and apply problem-solving skills. I apply knowledge and skills to understand contemporary global issues. I make decisions and arguments based on evidence. I develop media literacy skills to identify and analyze bias and misinformation. But Sean got me thinking when he started talking about collaboration and the we, and I said, I could imagine there would be a group presentation or a student presentation, a collaborative effort where it's a we can't statement. And so a student would say, we developed and applied problem-solving skills, and here's how in their presentation. So I can see this evolving even in the high school, potentially even this spring if students wanted. They do a lot of collaborative projects, and there might be an opportunity for them to present together their own portfolio, a joint venture in some way. So I think there's a lot of potential there. I just wanted to acknowledge that. So we'll just go to the next slide. There's a lot of bullet points. I won't be reading them all, I promise. But I want to give a little bit of the history. I mean, before even April 2024, the high school was focused on developing the vision of a graduate, as is expected through the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. And you look at most high schools in our area certainly have a vision of a graduate, profile of a learner. They have used different names for it. There are only a few districts that really have, I'd say in Massachusetts, that have developed the portrait of a learner. And we were inspired in our training with another Massachusetts school district. It was Nipmuc Regional. Their work on the portrait of a learner. They had started the same way, started to focus on a vision of a graduate, and then they decided to go K-12. And I'm pretty close with the principal there. I know him really well, John Clements, and it's actually a co-principal model with Marianne Moran as well. And in conversations with them, we were talking about this. I brought up Beth Kelly, and Kelly was more than enthusiastic about it. He was super excited about the idea of this. It's certainly a legacy piece for Kelly to have brought this to Littleton. And in the April, after our April 2024 conference, I've already presented on that previously. We knew we wanted to do more. So if you look at the August 14th bullet, August 14th, that's sort of where it all kind of came together in that summer retreat workshop with the admin from Nipmuc Regional. Initial planning and development of district-wide portrait of a learner. So I just wanted to give you I was charged with giving a little bit of a history here of where we come from. So that hence all the dates, and you can see all the intensive work at the high school, that's just the compact since 2024. There's a history at the high school before that about all the work we did to prepare for that April 2024 collaborative conference, which you presented on already. So we're building toward May 3rd through the 6th to our NEASC accreditation. So a lot of activities have been focused on preparing for the reaccreditation. But we also, in tandem with all the schools, we participated in the same exercise. that we didn't have the exact same model developing the vision to graduate, but we wanted consistency pre-K to 12. So all the things my colleagues have mentioned about developing their portrait of a learner, magnifying the moments, looking at co-curricular activities. We participated in that model, defining what learning is. I know Beth's already presented on that previously. Big accomplishment for us this year with the last two bullets. September, we really kicked off this year with an intensive focus on going from intention and vision to implementation. So the PD days were very beneficial to have and focus on that. And then we took the next PD day on September 24th, focused on assessing and demonstrating the skills, and the faculty were. This is happening in our advisories models. We meet the teachers have, as everybody knows, they loop with their kids 9 to 12, and they have an advisory that meets every Monday. And then we have the flex block. It's the same time, roughly 9:10 to 9:40 every day. And Monday's the dedicated advisory. And that flex block is not advisory. It's an opportunity. They can stay in advisory and stay with their advisor, but they can also go and do lots of other things, get academic support. They can go work out in the gym, in the weight room. They can play basketball. They can do all kinds of things. They can hang out in the cafe. So you've heard about that flex block already. But the advisory is critical to this. And I really wanted to emphasize, to your point earlier, about this is going to be a lot of work for teachers. And there was definitely apprehension about what we have another prep here, what's going on. I've stressed to the teachers in all the faculty meetings that we've had this year, they are the guide on the side, not the sage on the stage, as the old expression of cliche goes. And they are just to guide the students on the develop check. They have to check on their portfolios. They say, where are you at? And I told them to let us know as administrators if they're falling behind, if they're not, being compliant. So some of the kids will, especially 11th grade, what is all this? We never had to do this. 9th graders, it's all new. They've known any better. So this over time, as they all come up, they'll be accustomed to it. We purposely left out the class of 2026. The seniors their minds are on totally other, so many other things. And we didn't want to bother them with this, especially where they will start to check out when we're doing these in the spring, when we're typically doing these presentations, and they're ready to move on and transition to their whatever they're doing in the post-secondary life. So we can go to the next slide, Steve, thanks. So here's on the top there, you'll see rollout for grades 9, 10, 11. And class 2026 is not participating. We created digital portfolios that have Google folders for all 6 competency areas. And we clarified, I want to go to this third bullet. I know it's a little dense there, but you have in front of you on your screens too. Clarified the learning experience assessments that already exist in the curriculum, because this is to the point of like extra workload. Like, are we going to have to do a whole other thing here? Like, no, we're going to use our existing assessments, our existing curricular activities, instructional activities, and the students can identify. We went through an exercise where every department participated in this, and they identified all kinds of things that they are currently teaching that they can, and we shared this with the kids. The kids have a long list of cross departments. Every course had to list something that a student could use as a magnified moment, potentially something they could claim for critical thinking, engaging in, great communication, engaged citizenship, all the different competencies. And there's certainly plenty of examples of critical thinking and healthy and well-balanced learning throughout what we're currently doing at the high school. So that was a relief to the staff that they don't have to go out and create something new. We're already, they can take credit, and kids can claim what they're already working on. And it wasn't an add-on for kids. It's just, what you're already doing exhibits this. Our curriculum instructional delivery is all built around these competencies. I mean, this is fused into the curriculum, even through the frameworks, critical thinking, skillful collaboration. So as was noted earlier, we reviewed a roadmap for grades 9 to 12 that show current course assessments and co-curricular experiences that students may use in their digital portfolios. And we brought in a lot of things that weren't necessarily, curricular. It was one student, well, it's more of a club activity, but a STEM research project that she participated in. That was related to curriculum. But if a student had done something remarkable with community service, and it wasn't even a Littleton High School thing, they can present on that in the spring. They can present on all kinds of things that they engaged in. Maybe they participated in some type of thing in the town that displayed engaged citizenship. A lot of our kids, they're involved in so many co-curricular activities that aren't connected to the public schools. And it might be even something that they do in athletics, or even, learning about earning a black belt or something. And we have kids with black belts in Taekwondo and things like that. They could present on that. And so we wanted to broaden the view, and this was really refreshing to learn. We learned this from Nipmuc. That's not an ES thing. That was something we thought. And the Nipmuc, fortunately, the Nipmuc administrators, the principals, they're professional presenters for NEASC as well. So we know that this is going to, hold up. So down to the bullet where it says communicated advisory process, student reflection, demonstration, presentation of the learning. The huge focus here is on student self-assessment, student self-reflection. They're assessing themselves, and they're going to present on what they learned. We had a very important meeting this month, February 11th, faculty meeting, where we focused on reviewing the Portrait of a Learner template. And I wonder if Steve will be able to access it, or you can too, because it says example of a Portrait of a Learner student template. And we wanted to provide this to the staff so all the advisory teachers, that's grades 9, 10, 11 advisories, could present this. The student did this. She actually completed it for every competency area, junior at the high school. And she was guided through her advisory, teacher in developing this Portrait of a Learner. And it's a nice exemplar. And so I'll just go walk you through this. Let me just bring up my example here I bring in front of me. So you'll see just the first one, my Portrait of a Learner student name, and sort of some generic material, my learning story, this is guiding questions. So every student has a template that they can modify. They also have some additional things that I haven't included in the presentation for brevity, but they have a really comprehensive reflection sheet, and they have all those magnified moments of learning that they can easily access. There's a list of them. If they're stuck, what should I present on? What's a critical example of my critical thinking, especially for the younger students? So my learning story, you go through this, you'll go to the next guiding questions are there. Okay, and I think there's another one. I'm a critical thinker. So here's the model. Here's the prompt for the student, a sample of what a student, how did you identify a problem, evaluate information, and develop a solution? So you see how this goes right back to the big visual graphic, and it connects to all the schools too. Artifacts include 2 to 3 pieces of evidence. For example, a research paper or a local issue, a flowchart outlining your problem-solving process for a project, a lab report with your analysis, and then a reflection. Write a short paragraph explaining what each artifact demonstrates about your critical thinking. I won't go through each of these, but I want to go just stop there for a second. I want to focus on the critical thinking one, where the student presents on a study of the effect of supplements on all kinds of things, longevity, and a high glucose diet. The print side kind of small, so I'm having trouble reading it. Reflection for this STEM research project. This is the student saying, I needed to think critically about the problem to develop a research question. After developing the research questions, I had to make a hypothesis on whether or not the supplements would be effective. After making the hypothesis, I ran experiments and wrote a lab report based on scientific evidence. So that would lead to dialogue with maybe with the advisory teacher. Right now, we wanted to keep it low stakes. I've mentioned this at previous presentations that we're not bringing in the public. Some schools do that, with the Sizer model. They can have community members come in, family members, parents can come in and watch. We might do that at some point. There might be something a student's really excited about and wants to, and they collaborated with a professor somewhere, because that is happening at our high school. They might want that person in the room so they can present on it. But it will lead to some dialogue. We purposely are keeping these presentations, especially this year, low stakes and brief on time. We're going to, even like they're going to be time, like in the sense of like, they'll told present, practice this at home, practice this at the advisory. And if a student's uncomfortable with that, because they will be presenting to their advisory classmates, and they can range from 5 to 12 in the room, depending on the size. But if a student's really uncomfortable and anxious about that, they can present it privately to the advisor, because this is the first time we're doing it. We just want to keep it low stakes, and they're not getting graded on it. It's just about them demonstrating their learning. There's not a report card coming out. It's not in the transcript. but they do have an artifact. They do have a demonstration of learning. Some of the kids in the future, the way we've learned, what we learned from Nipmuc is that some of the kids can even include this in their college application. There is a demonstration of the more and more kids are up, not just writing essays, they're uploading videos of something they did, that is really impressive in their high school years. This will lead to that, no doubt, and make it really easy for kids because I'm going to showcase that unbelievable thing I presented on junior year or sophomore year, and it's their senior year, and they can use that for their college apps, or even presenting something extraordinary that they did in high school to an employer. It all has potential here. So this stays with the student, their presentation and their demonstration of their learning. So if we just go through this presentation from the student who's a junior, again, she had a template of how she can demonstrate. I'm a skillful collaborator. All the prompts are there. The next slide. She goes in, I'll spare you my reading of it. This was from a French class, I believe. She has a demonstration of how she is a mindful learner as well, with journal writing. She has a demonstration of how she's an engaged citizen. And then she wraps up with, she also demonstrates how she's a healthy, well-balanced learner. Then she has a reflection at the end to sort of bring it all together. We'll go to that slide. What's next, and then the next slide, I think this should be, that's it, okay, that's her then, okay. What's next is she goes and explains, and this is up there for her to read and present if she wants to and engage with the audience. So that just the skill alone, not only the practice of the effort of creating this presentation, compiling, really reflecting upon powerful learning experiences, and she did an extraordinary job on this. I was blown away when it was presented in the faculty meeting. And I said, wow, here we go, advisory teachers. We're all set. Just share this with the kids and the kids can just go with this. And they'll do it to different levels of, enthusiasm. For this year, they only have to present on 2. We reminded the faculty that this young lady wanted to present on all the, so she just did it as an example. And she did it really effectively, but the students will only be engaging on, 2 of the 6 this spring. So I think I've mentioned this before too. It'd be great to have some of you come in, maybe at some point if students were open for it. I think it would be impressive for you to see. We'll get maybe someone who's willing to do it. I'm sure there'll be a few juniors. I know this student who presented, and a lot of our kids who have presented with DECA and with the STEM research project with Dr. Finity, they're very comfortable speaking in front of, you've had presentations in front of them. Yeah, some of those kids will be great. They'll be happy to have you come and see that presentation and show off a little bit.
Sure. We'd love to hear from students that we want to take a risk with, maybe they're not the same group of kids that always come through,
Yeah, but there's
It would just
other
be-
kids too.
Yeah.
Who we don't necessarily showcase at school committee, who don't know about the opportunity to present, and I think they would take us up on it, and
we would take them up on it.
The other thing I wanted to share with you, and I'll just pass this out here, if you wouldn't mind.
Really?
Passing these around.
It's fantastic
There you go.
practice for them.
Okay, I have enough here, Sean. You'll see, this is our school profile. And what's different is we've changed it you'll see the big blue block on the back there, where it says, you might want to turn it, you'll see the vision of portrait of a learner. That's something that didn't exist on our profile last year. This is new, but we wanted to make sure this was there, especially our accreditation year. So you can see there's there'll be more and more publication of this, for sure, in sending it out, messaging more to parents, make them aware of it. That's come up at previous school committee meetings. Do parents really know about this and why we're doing it? That certainly has come up related to UDL, and that's something that's one of our next steps there. But we want to also really spread the word among the kids. This month, I'll be meeting with all the 9th, 10th, and 11th grade goal course selection, the course selection process. We want in that meeting this month, or it's actually in March, I will be talking about the portrait of a learner, the purpose of it, the process, trying to set them at ease about it, but we're making sure they're aware of it directly from me of why we're doing this. They've already heard plenty from the teachers. And then the last thing I've already mentioned a couple of times, but it was one of my last bullets, which is that the spring student presentations are going to occur in advisory at our NEAS visit. will be happening in May 3rd to the 6th. We have purposely planned to have some of the presentations happen while NEASC is here, so they can see it. You know, there'll be some receptive advisories. They can see it in action. So that's a little bit of history for part one.
No.
Yeah, no, this was a great piece and that was a good presentation. Towards the end, when you started talking about, you know, a college interview or an employment interview or an interview for an internship, as you were talking about the creation of this, I was thinking like, what confidence this provides our students, because they've had an opportunity to sort of zoom out on all the things that they've accomplished. And they can just go to the well and talk about all these wonderful experiences that they've had as it relates to differentiating themselves from every other student that's, you know, had similar curriculum, right? They'll be able to speak to and like sort of elevate themselves over, you know, every other kid that's just got a high school degree and had a summer job.
Like,
Like,
we're going to use this as motivation for them to do it too, to participate.
really,
They can see a connection.
it
How
really
it benefits them. What's in it for me, right? The kids are going to.
what's in it for them is this is like real life translatable skill.
Right, but that's a
To
very
talk about
motivating
yourself.
question. That's what
Yes.
kids will ask, you know, why are we doing this? Why does this matter? Why should
You'll make more
is this extra?
Just wait and see how much it matters.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's not extra work. It's actually them just highlighting what they're already doing co-curricularly or within their existing course load. They're
correct.
just grabbing something and spotlighting it and presenting on it. So it's not an add-on.
Yeah,
Years ago, the NEAS model was asking for too much and it was very much perceived as an add-on. And we've kind of turned it in a direction that really works for kids and works for us as a staff. But the connection too, I want to compliment my colleagues on their presentation tonight because I was just smiling over here, listening to them all because I could see the benefit of when these kids arrive in 9th grade, they're going to be, even if they're not, you know, they might have a different portfolio presentation model or something like that, that's different, age appropriate. But I can see the benefit and the confidence the kids will have, and certainly the familiarity with all this language when they're in 9th grade. And it will just get better and better as they take each step,
Mhm.
you know, up through, 9 through 12.
Yeah, I mean, it's just essentially their resume as they graduate.
Right.
Little
In fact,
high.
That's something kids could do and present on.
Yeah, I mean, you know, even if they practice the presentation, like it's the mental well that they can go to talk about the experiences they've had. And then as they progress in whatever field they're in, they just simply replace the previous example with the next example that they've got that's more relevant to the topic. It's a great skill set for these kids to have.
And to Jason's point earlier about, taking a test and, or studying for something and then just forgetting it. Kids, just think of the portfolio itself over time as kids go through high school. They're going to look back. I really did learn something. I really did. This was me. And they're highlighting things they pick with guidance and counsel from staff. But they're picking things that they're proud of. They're things that they were excited about learning, whether it occurred in the class, in a course or outside a course.
Right.
And I don't want to step on, but I can add to what you're talking about is, so my kids went to Parker and my oldest started 7th grade, and asking her to speak in front of people was like torturing her. She was one of those students who was like, never. And they really kind of didn't take no for an answer.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know that, I don't want to force, I don't want to torture anybody, but I will tell you that because it was just like, okay, you don't have to do a lot, a little bit now, a little bit more, a little bit more. And she was in 10th grade, she was not a math student. She was like, I'm going to read my books, I'm going to do my thing. I saw her give a presentation about the math that she had chosen to present.
Yeah.
And her peers came in, and having the peers there has something. I can't give you like specifics. I don't have any data, but it's something. And I saw her teach some of her peers in 10th grade really advanced mathematics. A couple of them were like, I've never been able, and she sat and they just noodled and back and forth.
Yeah.
This kid that didn't want to talk in front of anybody.
Yeah. Well,
And didn't want to do math. And then, like by 10th grade, by not letting them completely slide away from that. And by giving them that opportunity to present and talk and share, you have to do it to learn it,
Right.
right?
And you'll be happy to know that that is really a staple part of our program already. It's not just for this presentation. If you were to go into Littleton High School 2 or 3 years ago, probably same for middle school, you'll see kids presenting all the time. And what I'm amazed at is in the world language program, world language teachers have a strong emphasis. I've been noticing it especially through the walkthroughs this year on student presentations. Now, granted, they're minimum, you know, depending on the course, whether they're still biliteracy kids with high fluency or not, or just kids who are beginners, they're in a different language, you know, highlighting things as well. So that's happening actively at the high school already, and also in multiple departments. I think it's really pronounced probably in ELA, just from my observations, world language, and history and social science. Students getting up, making presentations about a project or something they learned with different levels of length, you know,
Nice.
different timelines.
Nice.
I mean, my fourth grader showed me her Canva presentation.
Yeah, there you go.
Like it is
It's
very
happening
much
everywhere.
a skill that we value, and it's very obvious. I had a couple of things, I wrote them down, but
Yep, sure.
it's because this is so exciting and really cool. One, really appreciate just seeing the whole timeline of the process.
Yeah.
And actually kudos to all of you and Beth, because that's something that we had asked for last time. And you definitely heard that, and we see that throughout the presentation. It's why we're all so engaged. So really appreciate the structure of the whole presentation. And I think it's so cool to see at this point that you are at, because you're further along than some of the other schools, how the theory turns into practice. Like that's why we're asking all these questions.
Sure.
But we can see it in yours, which is really cool. I love the last slide of this exemplar
Yeah.
in the what's next, where
Yeah.
he says, I was surprised my assignments were connected to things like effective communication and critical thinking.
Yeah.
That level of like metacognition on the student's part to say, I had no idea that these things my teachers were asking me to do were leading me to these competencies, like that aha moment is just incredible. And it made me think about when you were talking about this whole presentation, this is literally, again, an adult skill.
Yeah.
Like I'm about to go through supervising annual conversations, and we ask employees to like, you know, show an artifact. I mean, Kelly, you do your own evaluation, right? Like even in the professional world,
Right.
you show artifacts. And so to have them practice this at this age is just so incredible. And to your point, leads right into their life in college and beyond. And so it made me think about something that we do in the workplace related to that is then start to create like SMART goals on where they could continue to grow and learn. And to your point earlier, Justin, of like being exemplar in every competency is going to be challenging. So where they're able to identify like, I did this really well, here's my artifact. Are there also opportunities to say like, as a freshman, my goal next year is to really work
That's
on this
Another
competency,
great suggestion.
and here's how I will do it.
Right.
Right? That's what we do in the workplace.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
I got this, I really want to work on this. And then to make it a SMART goal, like I will do it by this timeline, in this way, with this support, like
And
what could that look
we
like?
could have the advisor teachers who want to loop with that student, you know, remind them of that
Help
when they
them,
want
yeah,
to see them in the
support
fall
them.
and say, or
Yeah.
help them reflect on it and say, well, let's write down what we're going to do next year. But that could be like a summary activity.
Yeah,
They conclude their, you know, it is there, it's what's next, but what's next fall, you know, next
yeah,
fall.
yeah, because then it becomes an ongoing,
Yeah.
again, a skill to practice is like, you won't have every competency all the time, but how are you going to set a goal for yourself?
Yeah.
Is it going to be attainable? What's the timeline? It's really hard for some adults to set SMART goals.
Yes,
Like,
right.
it's just, so it's
Well,
a,
it's a
another
wonderful
practice.
recommendation. We'll include that in our process this spring. We can jump right on it.
Yeah.
It's an easy thing to do, and we'll add it.
Great.
I just want to express my gratitude to my colleagues too, that for their engagement in this. This has been really a great conversation, and also, you know, thank you to all the principals for coming. And I know that our typical format has been to come and present something when it's already completed, but our discussion is so much more robust when we get to learn about things while they're happening and actually get into the weeds a little bit with you. And it's, this has been really beneficial. So I always feel bad asking you to come in after work for these presentations because you've already had such a long day, but really appreciate it. I did just have one kind of smallish question for you. on your third bullet point, we don't have to go back to the slide, but that you're looking for opportunities that already exist in the curriculum for students to reflect on, you know, whether they showed one of the competencies.
Sure.
So are teachers kind of pausing at the end of like a moment, like a lesson or a project,
Well,
and
we're-
being like,
Mhm.
so this is a time to maybe reflect on, was there a competency that you were showing in this assignment?
We talked about that at our faculty meeting, and some teachers are actually, there's a couple of extraordinary examples of that where teachers are actually putting it on the assignment.
Yeah,
This is an example, I was really impressed by that when that came up in the meeting, where teachers are actually spotlighting the competency, critical thinking. This is a good example you could use for a portfolio. There are teachers starting to do that, and they were sharing that in the meeting with their colleagues. So I think that will be more display. The other thing is teachers could use it in their unit plans and identify it there. Prime examples, but it is being spotlighted for sure. And the advisory teachers are guiding them through it if kids get stuck. So yes, it is starting to happen. And I think one of the last things I would say is that we're going to learn from this visit and see what NIAS says about the process too, and how we can refine it. Because their colleagues at other schools, that's how the model works. They're administrators and teachers and counselors from other school districts that will convene here in Littleton and give us feedback and write a report, and then we'll present their findings back to school committee as well. That's part of the process. But I think, we'll learn a little bit about that. Hopefully they'll come away impressed by what we're doing. We kind of accelerated things this year with the whole portrait of a learner emphasis. So I'm really pleased just as principal with the progress we have made, and that we're going to be prepared. The students are going, a lot of times NIAS can come in and this is not, the assessments are not underway. And that's a typical thing, that they have a vision of a graduate, a portrait of a learner, but they don't have the assessments. It's so easy to have that happen because of so many competing commitments. We have the assessment process underway, and we think it's a really good one where it's based on student self-direction, self-assessment, self-reflection. And it's student-led.
that's awesome.
Sean?
Thank you.
Kind of jumping off of, Nima spoke about self-reflection, and kind of Justin talked about being able to kind of sell yourself, but I just want to say self-reflection I think is really good too, because whether they go to college or whatever's next for them, they need to think about what they want to do, right? We've all been 18 and picking a major, and that's a big life choice to make. I think it's really good to have the presence of mind to kind of understand what you like doing, who you are, how you got here, to then make that next choice, right? I think that's really big. And kind of what Justin was saying as far as like, if you're in an interview and how that helps, I think selling yourself is such a critical piece. Like it's such a skill you'll always have to use, and that's really good. And it kind of coincides with, understanding yourself, right? So that's great.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Great. So I'm really proud of our leadership team, and for me, this evening, you can see the passion and commitment for this initiative. For me, it's marking a moment. It's time I have begun my transition, and presentations like this for me just give me. I always had confidence in our leadership team, but this is just another verification that the district is in great hands as a result of your leadership. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody.
Wait, there's more.
They're all coming back.
I know. So that was a super impressive presentation and really engaging conversation. I'm gonna have to police this a little bit because we're at 8:38, and at this pace, I mean, I don't know if you brought your sleeping bags or not. But with this next presentation on UDL, if the school committee would just allow the presenters to sort of go through the material, feel free to go through it at a quicker pace, because I know we sort of weaved some of these UDL concepts into this massive portrait of a learner conversation. We'll ask our questions or comments, but we should try to do so in such a fashion that we can get through the rest of agenda and be respectful of everybody's time.
Can I just add something to that? I know, Michelle, you're first up, and I looked at the slides already, and I think the school committee might benefit from a very brief overview about what UDL is, because there's a lot of references to the, engagement and, the representation and action and expression, and without understanding the framework, those terms might not
I'm gonna do
land.
my best. I
Yeah.
might need to call on Mrs. Steele for this.
Okay.
My understanding, the way I look at it, is universal design for learning is what are the practices that we can put in place that all students can benefit from? Not just one thing for one student, but a general practice that many students could benefit from, whether they are a high-performing student, student has challenges, student who has ELL challenges. Just it really kind of levels the playing field so that they can all enter in a similar area and then find their path that matches them.
That was beautiful. The only thing I will add is that the purpose of university design learning is to have student agency. So it's to create students who know how to learn and how they can learn and overcome barriers. And so it's done in three, if you look at the actual framework, it's set up in 3 columns, which is what Elaine, you were just referencing, right? So it's multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, and multiple means of action and expression. And so all of it's as educators trying to lower barriers so that students can create their own agency to learn by way of the examples that Michelle just gave.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, so our focus this summer when we were at our summer AC, it actually dovetailed with something that we were working on at the end of last year and brought into this year. So we are working on our first goal was multiple means of engagement, and it's specifically guideline number 9, which talks about design options for emotional capacity. So just really quickly, those areas are recognizing expectations, beliefs, and motivations, developing self-awareness of self and others. Kids are very egocentric when they're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, but that's their life, but really starting to realize that there are people around them. Promote individual and collective reflection and cultivate empathy and restorative practices. So when I was talking earlier and said, what's coming, it kind of if you think about a portrait of a learner, this is what we are focusing on. So last year we created a 25-minute morning meeting. The whole school shuts down right after announcements. We have 25 minutes. If you are not a classroom teacher, if you're the principal, the reading specialist, the school adjustment counselor, you are joining a classroom for morning meeting so that everybody is engaged in creating that environment. So what we did this year is there are a number of staff members. We have a kindergarten teacher, 3 grade 1 teachers, and a grade 2 teacher who worked with me, who were trained in responsive classrooms, morning meeting style, which has different components. You can see them there under Building Connections. We created PD for our staff so that we could build these small communities. After COVID, we started to implement a 45-minute SEL block, which was great. And I think we brought some of those social emotional skills that were lacking, but now our kids are getting better. Their social emotional learning it's coming along. So we're really trying to create these classroom communities. And this dedicated 25 minutes is something we set aside last year. And, when Beth had asked us, she said, make sure you present to them, how are you going to measure it? Well, we can do plenty of measurements. We can look at, how are the kids engaging in morning meeting? Are they sharing? Were they not sharing at the beginning of the year? One of the things that was so powerful yesterday, I read a diversity reading of a book called All Kinds of Families that talked about, different kinds of families, 2 parents, 1 parent, 2 moms, 1 dad. And one of the kids, I said, we're like a family here at Shaker Lane. And one of the kids in this 1st grade classroom said, that's kind of like our classroom. We're a family. You see that poster, Mrs. Kane? That's all of us together. And I was like, okay, that is not something that I could have qualitatively measured, like the think sheets or the reflection sheets. But that is something that these kids said, yeah, we're a family in Mrs. Giles' class. So that was really cool. I bring that up because one of the things up there is a revised think sheet. You can look at it more closely on yours if you blow it up. This was really the reflection piece for kids, visuals. What zone are we in? We talk about the zones of regulation, red zone, yellow zone, blue zone, green zone. So when the kids fill out this think sheet, it's, what happened? Who did it happen to? Where did it happen? How was I feeling? How was the other person feeling? This is like a 5 to 10 minute conversation that a 6-year-old. And then it really gives them a chance to look at different perspectives. Did it happen with my teacher? Did it happen with a friend? What could I do it next time? How can I make this right? So we revamped this year. Again, all falling under this design options for emotional capacity. And the bottom part is that's a 2nd grade classroom. And that was one of the activities that they were doing during morning meeting. That's one of our reading specialists right there who happened to be in the morning meeting with me that day. So that's our focus this year. All right, number 2 is multiple means of action and expression. This one really stemmed from our first year of implementing Wit Wisdom, kind of going through the year and seeing what went well and what are some areas we needed to grow in. And we really found that there were some challenges to Wit Wisdom for some of our students who struggled, whether they were, had some reading challenges or just weren't connecting with the material that we wanted them to. So the first thing we started here was partnering with Lesley University to provide scaffolds for Wit Wisdom. So we have a person that we're working with 3 times so far this year. She's coming in again in March. And you'll see on the bottom left, that is a highly scaffolded sheet. A regular entry point would be completely blank and just has the prompt. I can't read it, but how did the actions, you can read that. So this is like the most scaffolded. What they did with Nikki Drury, our PD person from Lesley, is we took that original one, and one of the scaffolds is just having first, then finally. And when we talk about universal design for learning, when Beth said the kids can kind of pick their entry point, some of the kids don't have pictures. Some of the kids, this one has, I believe there's a spot for writing the information in. So it's really finding out what, in the beginning of the year, what does the kid need? But then at some point, transferring that ownership. You know what? I need that one, or I can try that one. It's even the teacher pushing the kid and say, you know what? I think you're ready for this one. You can do that one after if you want, because it's a little easier, but I think you're ready for this one. So we have been working with Lesley University to really create those scaffolds to build fluency and support for the kids. The top right one is one of the PDs that we are working with our staff, is really using Gemini to put a prompt in there, to put in a lesson plan and say, how do I create scaffolds for a student who's struggling with comprehension? And this is the lesson that they're working on. So really trying to use AI to help teachers work smarter, not harder, and thinking about it themselves, but really using AI to tailor stuff that's going to spit it out that would have taken them probably an hour to research, create, develop. And then the bottom right one is creating opportunities for cooperative learning within the school day. Again, this is during a what I need time. And I talked with the teacher about this. I said, tell me more about this. And she said, some of the kids want to do the easy activities, and I wouldn't want a kid to not do that. So it's still there. It's there for them to do that fun stuff if they want to do an ABC sort, or if they want to do something, but really getting them into the area that's going to push their thinking, challenge them, but also be available to just do something fun because it's easy for them. So I think that's my stuff.
Great.
Thank you.
Yes. Go with collective questions at the end. It might speed things along.
Hello again. So for Russell Street, our first goal around multiple means of representation, the consideration about flexible methods and materials. And those considerations came from a document that we all looked at our admin retreat over the summer from the Novak Consulting Group, which is Katie Novak's kind of like the guru of all things UDL, and came up with these look-fors of if UDL is working really well in a school, here are the things that we can look for and find evidence for. So we've been looking at some of those specific look-fors and making plans for individual schools around what are the places where we feel we did some self-assessments at admin retreat. We had our teams do some self-assessments at the beginning of the year. So for Russell Street, the first look for that we looked at was flexible methods and materials. So I'll just kind of share a few things that we've been doing for that look for. And the first thing that I wanted to just was a good thing to remember is that is a direct alignment with our school improvement goal. It's actually goal number 2. I looked at it before. It's not goal number 1, it's number 2, of similar to what Principal Kane was saying, right? Our year 2 implementation of Wit and Wisdom is the year where we can find the ways to adapt and adjust Wit and Wisdom to better meet the needs of all of our students. So that was our school improvement goal, which is a great tie-in to these UDL look-fors. And some of the things that we have been doing so far this year is customizing the learning experiences for the focusing question tasks and the end of module tasks for our students. Those are kind of the big assessments that come out throughout a Wit and Wisdom module. And the picture that you see there with the astronaut on top of the moon is just one example of how our 3rd grade team has been working on adjusting some of the expectations, some of the the ways in which students can meet the expectations for what they're learning in Wit and Wisdom. This assessment, as it is written in the Wit and Wisdom teacher manual, has nothing to do with any artistic component of it, has nothing to do with finding pictures from online. I think there's a little lunar lander there that you can see there. It really is just a writing assignment that students can either put down on a line sheet of paper or type in the Chromebook. But our third grade team and all of our teams have been thinking about how can we make these assignments and these assessments more engaging for our students. And they have also come up with ways to have an exhibition component for some of these assessments as well. You can see there that student work is put on their locker so that the third grade hallway, if you walk down it, you will see lots of different examples of students were studying space for Module 2, and they had the option to write about whether or not it was a good idea, whether or not the Apollo missions were a good idea for us to explore space. So you can see lots of different student writing, student artwork, student representing kind of their thoughts on whether or not the Apollo missions were a success for space travel. Other things that we've been doing, we're working with a consultant from Lesley University this year, some of the professional development that we've worked on with our teams, again, using AI to support flexible methods and materials. We gave teachers a lot of instruction and time to practice and kind of get messy with some generative AI tools so that they can find what works for them, so that the goals can stay firm, but the ways in which students can reach those goals are varied. And using AI as a tool to help give teachers some inspiration and some thought to how they can adjust and change some of those opportunities for students. And then most recently, when our consultant was here, we developed a schedule where we were able to have teachers meet vertically with third, fourth, and fifth grade teachers all meeting together so that they could continue to have those discussions on how are they adjusting Wit and Wisdom, how are they adapting, because a lot of the work from Wit and Wisdom, right, it's continuous. So what they're working on has those pathways and those throughways from third, fourth, and fifth grade, well, really starting in kindergarten, but all the way up through fifth grade. So it was really great to get our teams vertically talking to each other because there's always new and great ideas that are being shared from colleagues that might not be a part of your team, but have really great things to share with what they're doing. And then the last thing that I'll share for flexible methods and materials, that screenshot is a Padlet that we created during a couple of our staff meetings. And the columns there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think there might be 6, but I got cut off. 5 or 6 common types of activities that you will find in a Wit and Wisdom module. I think I see a notice and wonder chart, a chalk talk, a mix and mingle, a Socratic seminar, and a teacher read aloud. Those come up over and over and over and over again for all of our students throughout Wit and Wisdom. And they're great lessons, but if you're doing the same thing many times over, it can get a little stale and stagnant, or it might not be the right way to reach those certain or specific students in your classroom. And if you just keep doing the same thing over and over again, you might be missing out on some really great student learning. So what we did at a few staff meetings was we just put it out there and said, hey, we know what the goals are for those lessons, but how can we approach and still reach the expected goal of a chalk talk or of a Socratic seminar, but in ways that might be a little bit different and might be more relevant and resonate with kids more. So, right, for Socratic seminars, which as it's written in the manual, is a full group, whole class discussion, right? Where the teacher basically takes a step back and the students engage in the conversation. And that's a really great opportunity for some of our students. But if you're a student that's really hesitant to raise their hand or to participate or to speak in front of a whole crowd, that might not be the greatest option for you to show what you know. So we had our teachers kind of talk about, hey, what are the different ways that we can get students talking and communicating, maybe arguing or disagreeing with one another in respectful ways around what they're reading. And they came up with so many different ideas of how we're doing it. And just in some classes that I've been to when they've had Socratic seminars going on, I've seen classroom debates where they're split the class in half. And if you're agreeing, you're on this side. If you're disagreeing, you're on this side. And you're using text evidence to support your arguments and trying to get people to cross the room over to your side throughout the lesson. I've seen Socratic seminars that are more like what I call fish bowls, where you have smaller discussions happening at table groups all around the same things, but maybe a little better entry point for some students that are, you know, hesitant to speak in front of a whole group. So there's a Padlet there that's live and active, and our teachers are putting new ideas into it based on what they're trying with their students. So just that collaboration to keep it open and share the good stuff that people are doing in their classroom with their colleagues. Second goal is around multiple means of engagement, and the look for that I highlighted here, but we're obviously doing more work than just these two look fors, is learning objectives. And what I wanted to highlight here in the way that we wanted to promote these look fors as a whole staff is we've been doing learning walks throughout the year as an administrative team, and central office team members come around and do these observations using some of these look fors. But what I wanted to do at Russell Street was make that or establish a culture of peer observations around these UDL look fors so that colleagues could get into their teammates' classrooms to do a few things. One, see all the great things that are happening in other classrooms around the school. Have a culture of being more comfortable, like sharing your work and sharing your practice with peers. And then having staff members be a part of that data collection on how we are doing and what we are seeing in classrooms that's working really well and where are the areas that we need to grow. So I put a couple bullet points here of just what we've done in that regard so far. So as a leadership team, we established the look fors that would be best suited for peer observations to go in, learning objectives being one of them. I presented kind of the goal for these peer observations to the staff at a staff meeting, took all of their questions. I think it had been some time since peer observations or instructional rounds were done at Russell Street School, and it's putting teachers in somewhat of a vulnerable position to welcome other adults into your classroom and put your practice, on display for others. So lots of questions around how we were going to handle that and making sure that everyone felt comfortable and it was on a voluntary basis to have people come into your classrooms while we get this off the ground. We conducted our first round of peer observations a few weeks ago, early February. The leadership team, we split into two groups, and they were the first people that got the opportunity to go into classrooms and take some notes and give some feedback and really appreciate their colleagues for all of their great work. The screenshot that I have there is the note catcher that we were using to just look at specifically learning objectives. Okay, how are we seeing learning objectives in this classroom? On the other side of that page, we were also looking at formative assessments. So, okay, how are we seeing learning objectives and how are we seeing teachers assess in their classroom and how are those two things interrelated? And then we plan to conduct these monthly peer observations as a consistent practice at Russell Street going forward. So in March, I will invite the people that got observed to now come with us on a learning walk so they can be on the other side of the note catcher and see some of their peers in classrooms and make that a constant and a consistent practice at Russell Street so we can all be a part of seeing all the great stuff that's happening in our school, because I think a lot of times it feels very insular and isolated when we think we're just kind of alone in our classroom. It's great to give people the opportunity to see what else is going on, and then also to collect that objective and quantitative data as a staff so that when we come together and make our next year's school improvement goals or think about what we're going to talk about at a staff meeting, we can say, we were all a part of understanding, where we want to go next because we were all in each other's classrooms. Great. Thanks.
Found it interesting when I was creating this, how the four schools have four such very different formats for their slides. It's very UDL. And I will speak to the, middle elementary's colorful and bright and lots of stuff, and middle school is just like, ugh. Black and white, just tell me what I need to know and move on. We tend to represent our schools, I think, in that way. I'll start with kind of where we left off, at least in terms of the portrait of a learner. One of the nice things about what we're doing at the middle school is I think both things, there are a lot of touch points along the way. I really want this to be the focus of this year. And so it just so happens that it covers, in terms of both initiatives. But our first focus area is, actions, multiple means of action expression. And what we really want to do is we want to have opportunities for students to customize their learning experience. So to go just a little bit more in depth into what specifically that looks like, we talked about capacity and independent work, but it's not a small thing to ask teachers to allow students to demonstrate their knowledge in their own way. It's really not. It actually is not something where you can just say, listen, here, you're going to create this, show me what you have in the end of what. It actually takes a massive amount of front loading. And if you're willing to do the work up front, it pays off in the end and you can be the facilitator. But it is laborious to start if we want to do this the right way. And so just the idea of saying we're going to change the way students demonstrate their knowledge, it's just not as simple as that. It's so nuanced. And so just getting people to that point of saying, okay, I'm ready to submit to this. I'm ready to say, okay, we're going to try this and we're going to try it a different way and I'm going to trust. And trust is hard, especially when you're working with people who've been doing this for such a long time and they have a way that they know that works and it's proven. And here comes the principal asking to change that. And so the how part of this really does become important. This is what we kind of wanted to dig into. I wrote, the bullet of the choice boards and the menus and all that stuff. Those are just, certain examples that we provide. But what we really want to do is move beyond the choice board to say, okay, you can do a trifold, you can do a brochure, or you can do a slideshow. We want to move beyond saying you have a choice, but I'm going to present you those choices. To me, that's not really the same thing. All right. It's just expanding what you're asking kids to do, but it's not really giving kids the creative to say, listen, I want to do something that's really going to tap into what I do. And I see how this connects. Because at the end of the day, we want this to connect to them and hopefully to connect to other content areas. And so these methods to navigate the content really become part of a new way of looking at it. And so what we really focus on is what does it look like in the classroom? So in that second box, the developed structure of these routines to help with the creative process. This isn't something, so I will speak to the experience. We've had a number of early adopters and we've had a couple that have been very thoughtful about it and gone through and we saw really great success. And we had some others who were like, I'm going to try it. We're just going to let it go. And I didn't say much because everybody has to learn along the way. But as an observer sitting there watching, going, okay, here's an area where we can tighten. Here's an area that I can tap into when we talk about it, right? To take what is happening, just to say that we've done it and checking a box is not what I'm looking for. Right? I know our teachers would do that, but I don't want that from us. I want this to create something that people go, wow, this was much better. From our students, I got more out of it. And frankly, I didn't have to work as hard when it was all said and done. So developing what those routines are, and those routines are going to look different in a 6th grade classroom than they are in an 8th grade classroom. And each one is going to be different depending on the teacher and their strengths. But the idea being is that if we're going to do this, our teachers need to have some time to really be reflective about their practice, what it is they want students to know, what do they want them to do, and how do they guide that along the way. And that's not something you can wing. That's not something that experience just has, right? It can certainly help you with that, but in its own, you just can't show up and say, okay, guys, you're going to do your own thing. You really have to prep this. And that part is where the real learning for our staff is. My hope then is that's what they model then for the students, because the students are going to be going through a very, very similar process. And so this implementation really to begin with is about developing those structures and those routines, thinking about it from the time that you start this to the end, and my way, starting at the end and working backwards to think about every absolute part of what you're going to do along the way. You have to think about it on a step-by-step basis, because if you're just looking, those marking moments is great, but those areas between the moments, the little mile markers in between are just as critical, because that's where we can veer off the road. And if the teacher is not diligent and if they haven't prepped and the students aren't ready for that, so much of that can veer off. And so really helping teachers think about it mindfully and really sitting down and going, okay, this is going to happen, and then this, or working backwards from that. And then as we move towards students and they're starting to create, what we want to see is then teachers challenging students to do something different, more in depth, right? Going to areas that they hadn't thought about before. So the student that says, listen, I just want to write a test. Okay, that's where you are right now. But the next time around, we're going to take that option off the table. Right now, we're going to start to move this. And so ideally, as the student moves through 6th grade, eventually into 8th grade, those opportunities, they change and they morph. We're nudging them along the way to say, We're not interested in status quo. I don't want you doing the same level of work in sixth grade that, as you, or in eighth grade as you were doing in sixth grade. So while this doesn't have the flash that I would love, this is the roll your sleeves up and do the hard work. The conversation began from in the beginning around critical thinking and independent work. And we talk about it, and the kids need to have this. This is where we roll up our sleeves to say, okay, if we're going to teach kids to be critical thinkers, then we've got to do this part of it. And so this is the eat your vegetables part of this work. And our teachers are doing this, and some are faster along where they are, and others are coming along. But I think we're starting to see that. So really, for us, it's really about laying the bedrock. So this right here is the bedrock of what we're doing, is creating that capacity in our staff to be able to say, I'm going to trust something that I have no reason to trust, that I've never done before, or I'm going to listen to, a person on my team who's done it. Now I'm excited and I want to try it because now I'm engaged in bringing something new into my practice. So that's really what this part of it looks like, is really establishing those structures that are going to allow us to happen. Next slide, please. Which then gets us to, and I spoke to a little bit about this in the Portrait of a Learner part, really thinking about exemplars and really helping teachers. So this is the first real strategy. Besides just mapping out how you want your next class to go or your next two classes to go, really thinking about what is it that we have to provide for our students so that they can do the work that we need them to do. And the question then becomes, do we provide exemplars? Do the students provide it? Are we somewhere in the middle? How do we scaffold those things, right? Students who are on an IEP might need certain supports that other students may not. What does that look like? How do we craft that? And how do you build the student confidence and the vision for them to be able to create something on their own and try again? Because chances are I'll speak from my own practice, the first time you try something like this and the kids come back and they're excited about something, but you're looking at it going, you've bitten off way more than you can chew here. You want to do a stop motion movie that shows, this thing happening that would take you months and months and months to create. So sometimes as a teacher, you have to be able to know your students and what their strengths are in order to move them towards those things. And so focusing on exemplars as a way for us to think about, what do our students need? What do I need to provide? What structures do? So for me, that part right there is the linchpin to so much of the work that we're going to do, because everything else then you can base coming off of that. The students know what they want and what it's going to look like. The teachers know what it's going to look like from the student. And we have something that we can create on our own to make that happen. And so that capacity then finds itself in the obstacles, helping students identify the obstacles that they're going to face. And that's part of the executive function that we talked about. If a student can say, okay, I know this is going to be a problem. I'm not going to have time at home to work on this. Okay, so how do I overcome that? And so those are part of the routines and the structures that allow for some of this work to really happen. So what does it look like? Really getting kids to spend time reflecting and thinking about, what does this final product look like? And it's going to be hard because there are some who just, I don't know, it's too overwhelming. For some students, it's too much choice and they get locked up in that. So how do we break that down? What's the entry point that we can find to help students at least begin something, and then they can take it and run from there? And those executive functioning routines to allow them to be able to not just manage their time, but their resources, the materials that they need and things like that. So these are the really two areas when it comes to the UDL practice that we're really focusing on at the middle school this year and into next, is how do we embed this in what we're doing in the classroom level? So much of what you see in these other competencies and other focus areas that we have at the middle school, we have 10. We're working on one a month in the course of this process. These are just 2 that we're working on at the moment. It doesn't necessarily describe the whole year. And so that's what we're really talking about here is getting granular and really looking at, how do we make the best practice? I worked for a job for years, and one year they brought in bigwigs from Disney to talk about customer service. And it was one of the best lessons I'd ever heard. And they talked about, when you go to Disneyland, you'll never see anybody point a finger. If you ask for directions, it's always this, right? This open hand. But the one thing that they said, that what they want to see from their employees, whether it's Snow White or somebody else, that it's okay to be off task as long as it's on purpose. And I've never forgotten that lesson. And if you can do that in the classroom, if you can reach that spot where if I walk into a classroom and it looks like chaos, but it's not, it's controlled and it's focused and it's guided, it's off task, but it's on purpose. That's where that begins to create, and students begin to discover parts of themselves. But it takes a while for educators to get there. It took a while for me to get there as an educator, and now as an administrator, how to facilitate that. This is something that I just wing. This is something that I have to think deeply about in terms of when we do meet with our staff and how do I want to lay this out. So these are the two areas that we're focusing on at the moment. And then as we move forward, we'll talk more about student reflection and that part of it so that it circles back around. But in terms of our two focus areas, I think these two will really take care of a lot of the work that we want to do. And I think the web that will connect to the other areas of focus certainly be there. All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, again, I've heard a lot of dense text, promise not to read it all, just give you some highlights, mindful of the time.
We've already read it, so you're.
Yep, got it. So multiple means of engagement, really, according to our training, the why of learning. This focus at the high school is on learning objectives. I think it's similar to Russell Street and what they demonstrated today. The firm grade level learning objectives are visible to students and referred to throughout the lesson. So what I've captured here for you are lots of examples, either through, learn through walkthroughs, but also lots of collegial conversations and teacher reports. And I'm very grateful to our teachers for demonstrating and sharing these examples in order to, be here tonight and present this. So I'll highlight a few. The first one, learning objectives frequently posted, projected with agendas and warm-up activities. That's something if you walked into a Littleton High School classroom, you'd see routinely. They're noted in unit plans, curriculum maps, Google Classroom for sure. A science teacher should, they frequently post objectives with an essential understanding or question and return to it during class. I wanted to highlight that because I know you have essential questions in each packet or the school committee meetings. Students in applied music course, they develop their own goals. I had a good conversation with Hillary Bridge about this, how that works. Another history teacher begins every class with a question of the day that addresses the learning objective of that day's lesson or the previous day's lesson. This teacher also provides students a list of essential questions for the unit that aligns with the summative assessment. And then students completing weekly reflection sheets connected to goals and objectives. I learned that from the special educators in the Learning Center. So to sum this up, one of the key phrases that's used with UDL is firm goals, flexible means. So I'm going to turn now to the next focus area, which is multiple means of representation, the what of learning. And this really anticipates learner variability. And flexible methods that a learning design provides students with flexibility in how they learn in some. Lots of varied instructional methods, especially notable, I mentioned this earlier in world language classes, there's a whole list of things, music, songs, different speaking activities, you've read it. You could see all kinds of examples of how things if you were walking through or talking to teachers, well, how do you, vary your methods? They would be sharing all this with you. There's another one I wanted to highlight was the last bullet. And I thought this was interesting. An AP Psych teacher has students use an adaptive quiz for their homework assignment. Students may complete it any time in a unit and may attempt it as many times as they want until they are satisfied with the score. And I really think this captures a lot of ways of multimodal ways of presenting content and helping student learning. So you can just, take a look at that. It's all for you to see. I want to go to the next slide. And again, another phrase that they use with UDL to your original question, is proactively designing. I love this phrase because it's right from the Novak training. Proactively design for the predictable variability of all learners. Proactively design, so teachers are anticipatory, not reacting to it, for the predictable variability of all learners. So here are some areas of growth. I wanted to point this out for us that we're going to continue to conduct more walkthroughs with follow-up conversations. I like a lot of what Colin said about having peer observations, and we'd like to get that going and continue to provide staff time for common planning, which is one of our priority areas, our goals, and the sharing of UDL practices, because they're doing it in different pockets, and some of them are really excelling at it, and others are sort of stuck or stuck in their old ways of doing things in a standardized way. Attend to the next two UDL focus areas. Jason mentioned this, how we're through our walkthrough forms, we have different areas of focus, and the next two for us that we're going to really emphasize throughout the remainder of the second semester is formative assessments and flexible assessments. So if I were to present to you in the future, I would be able to present a slide that was similar to the other two, where I show lots of examples of this, of flexible, assessments and formative assessments. We're going to communicate, we want to broadcast this more widely. This came across in a conversation with Beth Steele, really, and I think Elaine might have emphasized this too at one point, communicating messages to parents about what UDL is all about. I think you might have brought this up, Justin, at one point. The purpose, the spotlights in our Friday flyers, but also just showcasing it. We talk a lot about it, but do people really know what it is and why we're doing it, and really getting that out there and show examples of it. And we want to coach teachers. And I think actually some of the best coaches are actually not the administrators, necessarily Keith or me. It's actually it's the teachers themselves teaching each other. So coaching teachers who are attached to established standardized assessment practice and prompt more flexibility. They might take it better, a veteran teacher from a colleague who's experienced just like them, but who has adapted practice after all these years, and they said they can explain it to them. They're going to be able to be more convincing, I think, to say, here's an example of what I did, and I didn't actually used to do this, but now I do, and here's why. And highlight excellent LHS teacher examples of UDL practices at staff meetings. So we want to showcase the teachers more with teachers teaching teachers. And so that's my presentation. You want me to stay up for questions?
Yeah, well, I have a question.
Go right ahead, Elaine.
Yeah.
We could go backwards so that you don't have to jump up twice. but,
Okay, yeah,
yeah,
that sounds good.
So it's so interesting about the flexible assessments at the high school level, because you've got, some AP classes and honors,
Oh, yeah.
like classes that are preparing kids for MCAS, and those assessments are not flexible. So
Yeah,
it feels like there's some tension
there
there.
is, yeah. it's
with-
great.
What teachers are going to be able to be flexible about when they know this end goal is to prepare kids for these high stakes tests. So I imagine there's been some interesting
Yes,
conversations
one of the
about that.
classic things that comes up a lot, and this actually was before even any emphasis on UDL going back 10 years, is teachers, high school teachers in particular, 11th and 12th grade, really feeling that they need to prepare kids for colleges, and university professors who don't often have the best teaching practices. Stand and deliver, lecture and all that stuff. It's still happening, even though there's been so much research about the best ways to learn. And, a lot of the best practices are happening at the primary grades, right? The best teachers you see in terms of being able to meet the needs of so many different kids, and kids are learning in different ways and at different rates. We see that, this real high skill level. I would say particularly, not that our high school teachers don't do it, but really, Shaker Lane and Russell Street, for sure. And that would be, and I'm generalizing it to that grade level, like pre-K to 5, pre-K to 6. You start to see really amazing teaching to reach different learners. So I think there are constraints for sure, and there are debates. I mean, we have some really talented teachers who have been named Teacher of the Year at Littleton High School, who feel like they really need to teach it this particular way because, they're constrained by an AP course. They're preparing kids for a test. They have to answer a prompt in a certain way on an MCAS test. They want students to be able to handle a certain assignment at a collegiate level in terms of writing or research. The research paper needs to be done this way. So it's true. We are balancing that. But when possible, how do we vary? How do we flex? Because it is possible. It doesn't all have to be so standardized, and we have to find those opportunities and highlight them.
Yeah. I love that you're having the conversation, though. It's an important one to have. And then actually, this is a question for both you and Colin, because you had both talked about looking for learning objectives during the walkthroughs.
Yep.
And I was wondering if one of you could speak more to how that is part of the UDL look fors.
Yep.
And I can tell you what I'm assuming, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is the importance of the learning objective that there may be variation in the learning approaches in the classroom to apply UDL strategies, but that everybody will be meeting that same learning objective. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I would say it's trying to align to standards. So we have curriculum maps, and there's a lot of work put into that. Make sure the teachers are teaching to the standards, so that the goals are firm, but the needs are flexible. I actually have the UDL walkthrough form right here from front of me, and we had sort of a checklist. Post-lesson objectives, refers to objective multiple times throughout the lesson. You don't always see that. Provides opportunities to students to discuss and reflect on learning goals. That doesn't necessarily always happen. Clearly aligns instructional materials and assessments to stated goals. I saw that extensively and heard that extensively from teachers. So there's some place, another point here from this walkthrough form is provide opportunities for students to craft their own goals as they work toward those objectives. That's something we could work on, probably a little bit more, but there has to, again, we're constrained by a standardized curriculum. We need the frameworks. There's only so much customization teachers can have the time to do. There's a real tension there in terms of the workload they're feeling to be able to implement this in with real fidelity to the model. But we're trying to reassure them there are ways to be more flexible in how we teach and how kids learn. And I think the objectives, to go right to the point of your question, was that is fundamental. So we focused on that first semester. And it was part of Jason mentioned the 10 areas. And that is a focus area for multiple means of engagement. And engagement is critical. So we wanted to make sure that the teachers were adhering to the objectives. And we were pleased to report and find, not only through observations, but also through lots of conversations and just their own reports to me, that's happening all the time. And that's good. So check that box. And then we'll move on to the next area of focus, which is what I mentioned in the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Just real quick, it seems like a very clear through line about the peer review. I think that's great. I think that anytime you can kind of capitalize on, just to be frank, kind of the human capital you already have in the building, I think is great, right? We're putting a lot of investment in with PD work, and I think it's great that they can work together to kind of solve problems.
Thank you.
Questions for Dr. Harrington? Questions for Jason Everhart? Questions for
I have
Jason?
For Jason.
Middle school question.
Yeah.
Come on now.
This is actually just a clarifying question. So on your focus area number 2 about the exemplars, so can you talk a little bit more about, so you're looking for student independence and creativity, looking for different ways to show what they know, like the action and expression piece. But then the way I've always thought of exemplars is like a model that the teacher provides for what high quality work will look like for this task. But if it's all different tasks, does that mean that that the student would create an exemplar? Like, how do you have all these different exemplars?
You're going where I want you to go.
Okay.
I want to turn this on its head.
Okay.
Because I do think there is a point where we have to stop spoon feeding and saying, this is what I want. And I want you to create something that looks very similar to this. I think we have to get to a point. We don't start there, right? This is, along, we're down the road, but I think we have to get to a point when a student is faced with something that they need to do, right? I need to show what I know, that they can lean into it because they've shown it in many different ways. They have an idea of what that might look like. Even if they don't have a vision of what the completed product looks like, it's the exploration of what it is that they want to show that I think is more important than what the actual product looks like. Because if they're thinking about, what do I want to show? What does it have to have in it? What are the requirements, right? What's the content that I'm responsible for? Size, time, these things. I think that process at the middle school level is so incredibly important. I think we rob students of that when we say, create this. And so my staff had a similar reaction that you're having in terms of like, I'm not quite sure.
Former teacher.
Yeah. And like, I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. I'm not sure I like it. But I think as we move forward, people are going to realize that this is that journey. That's the critical thinking, and that's the independent work. It's in the ether. It's not something that you can quantify. It's not something you can touch and say, okay, I get what you're saying. It's something that's going to have to be experienced. But once you do that aha moment, that's the mile marker, right? That's the thing when a student says, oh, you know what? I know exactly what I'm going to do, and it's going to look like this. So for example, I'll use one of our first early adopters, and I think I mentioned this. She, our 6th grade ELA teacher, she rolled this out, and she wasn't sure. Right, she was one of our she was somebody who had a lot of questions about, exemplars, because we've been told, okay, our students need exemplars. Students on IEPs, we have to provide these things. But to say like, okay, I'm not gonna do that, we're gonna let them find their own. What some of these students ended up with was amazing work. Podcasts, one kid, wrote a whole rap song. Others did the amazing puppet show in 7th grade I saw in the ELA, like things that would have never happened otherwise, but they were every bit as rigorous. They were every bit as content oriented. They were every bit as interesting as anything that they would have done if a teacher had said, I want you to do this. The difference was that leap of, okay, I'm not the one in control. And I think for a lot of teachers, as educators, we need to feel a little bit of that, like we are guiding. So it's.
Well, and teachers are also living in,
Mhm.
within their own constraints.
Yep.
That they have to come up with equitable grades for a report card to report to parents. And so if everyone's doing something different and everyone's coming up with their own
Mm.
exemplar, I think it can get a little fuzzy
So
for
one-
teachers to feel like
Yeah.
they're being equitable among all the students.
One of the things that I didn't get into, just because for time, is the importance of rubrics and having something for kids to be able to say, okay, how do I know I've done this?
Mhm.
Because we have to provide that. We have to provide at some point, some level
Right.
for kids to say, okay, I've done everything that I've been asked to do. So if this isn't just, like I said, go for it and give me what you have and because you're trying to grade apples to apples. But if you say, listen, this is the rubric they're going to use. And sometimes where I'd like to get to is maybe where kids start to develop their own rubrics. Again, this might be pie in the sky, but I don't think it's harmful to set the bar that high and see how far we can get towards it. So if the students start thinking about themselves as a worker, I know what proficient looks like for me. I could do better, right? Or you know what? I nailed it. Like, I think we need to have opportunities for students to have that moment to say, you know what? I could have worked harder on this, right? That feedback that comes. We haven't even talked about the feedback loop that's a part of these things. And so just the idea of having students create their own exemplars is enough, but there are so many things that have to go with that in order to make it really function the way that I think it can. But yeah, what I'm asking is not common. It's a little unorthodox, but I think it's going to produce far better result and something that's far more meaningful and longer lasting. If we can do it and we can continue to do it. I don't want this to be something we're just doing for a year or two and then we're off to the next thing. I think there's something foundational about rethinking exemplars, reflective practice and routines that I think could really tap into something in an era where teaching has to be different. I think we have to find ways to sort of say, okay, then we're going to adapt too, instead of trying to get kids to fit into, a pre-COVID world of it. So, yeah, I understand your questions and I don't have all the right answers.
Yeah.
Some of this I'm on this journey myself, but if it works out like I've thought about for so long, I think we're gonna tap into something really, really special.
Thank you.
Not just a pre-COVID world, to your point, a pre-AI world.
Oh,
Like, what is our exemplar when AI can regurgitate the most beautiful and perfect? And so like really flipping that on its head and.
But this is a space where then you could use AI to help you, right? A student can create their own exemplar. Now that they have access to something that they could see in their mind, but had no way of creating.
Mhm.
Now they can, and now that becomes the thing they want to work towards. And that's where it's up to the teacher so that it doesn't just become, something that they can plug into ChatGPT and get. But I think AI might, in this particular case, might provide an opportunity to open some floodgates for students to be able to tap into some things that they might not otherwise.
Yeah,
But pride in their own creation.
Yeah.
and the critical thinking, which goes back to this, because it might look like an exemplar, but is it?
Yeah, but I think that's where at the end, that's where the conversation, right? The wraparound conversation at the end with teacher and student to really ask those questions. None of this just happens and then you're off on your own. Everything circles back to that point so that when a student walks out of that class, they know what they did, what they didn't do, what they could be improved, what they should continue to do, who they are as a learner, how best to manage, their time and resources. I think there's something, like I said, that builds that they can carry to those next levels.
Great.
Yep.
Questions for Principal McDonald or Principal Kane?
I just have a comment. So I love that you're doing the peer observations. I think those are so powerful and they're actually very hard to do because you have to arrange for coverage for teachers that are out of their classroom. It's a heavy lift schedule wise, which is why a lot of principals don't do it. But I really appreciate you making that happen because it can be so eye-opening for a teacher to walk into another teacher's classroom and be like, I never knew that was possible.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that.
I agree. We're not gonna let the weirdness of coverage and schedules and the minutia of how the school day runs get in the way of what we know is good practice.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Well stated. Well done.
Very good.
You all have been up for over 14 hours, so I think it's time that you start your journey home. Drive safe.
Yeah, I want to
Thank
say
you so
thank you very much, like two
Thank you.
pretty heavy topics today, so thank you for the extra time tonight. It was like fascinating to me how involved and engaged we were in presentation one, and then we sort of flipped the switch and it was like, oh my God, they have this going on like the portrait of a learner felt so fun. And then we went into the UDL and it was like, this is the in the trenches type work. So we just want to say thank you for doing that on top of the really engaging conversation we had before. We don't like discredit the UDL, and I think it might have been a lot of content for one night. So thank you for the extra time, and we appreciate all the hard work.
Yeah, and it really needs to be stated. These are two transformational changes. They're not transactional. You very seldom find a district that will embark upon a journey of two transformational changes. This is unique. And it's through the commitment of the leadership and the commitment of our staffs that make this possible. And actually, K-5, you have 3 transformational changes because wit and wisdom is transformational as well. So this is unique, and I think we always have to remember, and sometimes we need to slow down, because if we don't slow down, we're not going to be successful. And that ability to do the litmus test and see where we're at is so important. And you all do such an excellent job with that. So thank you.
Thank you. Keep thinking about rubrics, and the rest of student as worker is teacher as coach.
Right?
Drive safe.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Elaine has one follow-up question for you on top before we move on to the next agenda.
Sure.
Item.
Yeah, so we were, I was remembering last year when we were talking about your goals for your evaluation, we talked, the UDL walkthroughs were kind of a next step that you had mentioned for this year. And so that was part of why I was curious about the walkthroughs, and a couple of the principals mentioned that leadership was doing walkthroughs looking for UDL practices. So I just wanted to clarify, is that happening in every school? Like, is the leadership team going around to all 4 schools, or is it just
It's
two schools that mentioned?
school specific and Beth Lynn and I. So we're not at that stage yet. Our principals need to focus on their staff. I mean, they have over 40 staff. So that will come eventually. Up to the central office team to try to put the pieces of the puzzle together to see where we're at as a district. Right now, we want our administrators in our schools focusing with their staff.
Okay, so so because it was an interest at the high school and at Russell Street that those walkthroughs are happening, but it's in the future thing where it would happen more, live in more continue.
Well, they're happening in all,
continuity.
no, they're happening in all 4 schools.
But I mean, the learning walk type of walkthroughs specifically looking for UDL.
Well, we're already doing that. We're
Okay.
specifically looking for UDL.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
we developed our own walkthrough strategy
Yeah.
and assessment sheets. So all 4 schools are doing it.
Okay, great. That's what I just wanted to clarify, that that was happening this year. Thank you.
Very good. All right. That wraps up presentation portion of the evening. It's 9:32. I think if we stay on task, we can get out of here next 20 minutes or so.
Because we've all read the policies.
Right. And it's not gonna be Steve Mark that likely keeps us here beyond bedtime. So, Steve, we've got we'll move into 2 items of old business. First is a financial update, business manager, Steve Mark.
Report is in the packet. It's been it's a tough act to follow is the principals. So I'll make this quick, but report is in your packet. Again, as I've stated, we're in shape financially to meet all of our obligations through the end of the year. I don't see a budget shortfall. I don't see any issues. We have had some relatively minor unexpected expenses. The middle school elevator required about $30,000 worth of repair, which is still ongoing. It's temporarily fixed right now while the part comes in and then they have to kind of, re-engineer the whole middle school elevator for the new part because they don't make the old parts anymore. But we've had some repairs on some vehicles that were unexpected. Nothing we can't handle within the budget, but again, we're working with the assistant town administrator on some utility contracts moving forward, which will give us some good rates, not only for the rest of this year, but for the future years as well. Those are usually 2 or 3 year rate lock contracts for natural gas and things like that. So we're working on that. But again, there's nothing in this report that concerns us as far as budget or meeting obligations through the end of the year.
That's good news.
Yeah. Steve did a bang up job today on Sean's podcast, so.
Really did.
I urge everybody to go listen
Need
to the
more
podcast.
budget information. There's about
We really
15
delved into
minutes
the
of
budget.
recorded podcast on the budget.
Nice.
If I could also take a quick 30 seconds here.
Go do it.
It's not open yet, but I just want to prepare everybody. We will be opening bus registration up for next year soon. We're working on a small enhancement to that registration, online registration, which we're in testing now. So I just want people to be aware of it. Registration will be open soon. We encourage everybody when it's open to register and don't wait until 2 weeks before school next year to register your students because it's a nightmare. So thank you.
So Steve also slipped his bus registration commercial into the podcast.
I did.
Everybody.
All right.
I
you got
can't help yourself, but it's you're consistent if nothing else.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, Steve was excellent. Appreciate Justin as well. Great.
It was actually fun.
it is kind of good. All right, we good on the financial update?
Yeah.
Yep.
Good. All right, great. Item number 2, which is the superintendent search update. Member Shauna Hearn provide a brief update on the process of the search.
Yeah, I'll try and be brief with this. So a couple of things. So as I think some of you are aware, through communications committee, we're working on a couple of websites. One of the websites in tandem with Annalise Tabor, who really did a great job of making everything look great and bring it to fruition. And then Julie Lord helping to kind of set up everything and bring it to the full vision. We're going to have a website that has everything from recording a public forum, a breakdown of the survey that everyone took, has all the dates that are going forward, so everyone knows when interviews will be and so on. So that's really great. As far as the process itself, Elaine and myself met with Alicia from Mask. And so some of the things that we went through was a draft of the day of the district. The general sense would be that it would start about 9:30. There'd be a tour of the buildings, and then there'd be lunch administrators, conversation with the current superintendent, additional meeting with staff and paras, teachers. There'd be a dinner break, there'd be a community opportunity, and then we would interview at 7. So just to give everyone kind of an overview, we can dive into that more when we have more time, but I just want to give everyone a preview of that. And then a couple of things, I don't know that's worth having debate now, so we can kind of table this, but just want people to be aware. Do we want to have dinner with the candidates? Do we not? So just not to debate now, but just to think about. And then what stakeholder groups do we want to have included? So teacher, staff, central office leadership team, would we do one-on-one for the superintendent, current superintendent, students, parents, caregivers, community, CPAC, ELPAC, and PTO, how we want to frame that, how we have space for that, what we think is a priority. Again, I know we're kind of late, but just for people to think about that and kind of, I don't know, Elaine, if you want to have a discussion with us now, or if we want to.
Yeah, well, what Alicia needed from us was just some clarity about what stakeholder groups
Yeah,
we want to have meet with the candidates on that day that they're here in the district. So it definitely has to be teachers because
Right.
that's in our teachers' contract.
I
The
did want to.
leadership team. And Kelly, do you want to have a one-on-one
Sure.
meeting with the finalists?
Yep.
So,
Certainly.
and
Please,
then,
please make sure that you give the candidates some time to gather their thoughts for the interviews.
That's why I was debating not having dinner with them, but we can do
Right.
that later.
Yeah, and you know, even if you do dinner early enough, they're gonna need half an hour to wind down from the grueling day
No, I appreciate
before
that.
they come into the final interview, so.
Yeah, and there's, on the schedule that Sean just read, there was an opportunity after dinner to meet with the community, but to your point, that might be a lot right before an interview.
Right.
Agreed.
I mean, that interviews, they have that hour
And that's
to
it.
sell themselves. That's
Right.
it. So you want to make sure that you're not unintentionally setting yourself up where, some candidates may be more adept at switching the switch on and off than others. And that's not necessarily a quality that you really need. So you want to make sure that you give them all a level playing field.
So I think take that into account. I agree with that. I think if we figure out which stakeholders we want to use, we can start to kind of slot that in, and figure out how much time we need to kind of break that up. Do you agree, Elaine?
Yeah, I mean, right now with the proposed schedule, there's only a 15-minute break between meeting with the community and starting the interview, which is barely enough time to catch your breath.
We need to
Yeah, but
extend
the
that.
dinner could be a break, right?
The dinner could be a break, but then the way the schedule is laid out now, there would be an hour-long opportunity from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. We're trying, where we'd be trying to catch the folks who are working during the day, and this is their opportunity, parents, but to meet with the candidates, which that's an important component. This is what MASC recommends what they typically do with these searches. So we wouldn't be unique if that's the way we rolled it out here, but it does, I agree with you. It just feels like a long day ending up with an important interview, but it's,
That's the most important interview.
Right.
yeah. Well, you get to see the person under stress, right? Like,
And we are also doing these 3 days back to back.
Or possibly 4, yeah.
So we're talking about
Yes.
9:30 to 8 PM for 3 days straight.
well, but we wouldn't need to
No.
be
No.
there
You would
for
just
that.
need to be here at 7.
Exactly.
Right, that would just
You
be
could
3
choose-
evenings.
The 7th.
You can absolutely go if you want to be a parent, like a parent.
You could go up at
It's
6
up to you,
and be
but
part of
you
the
don't have to.
community thing,
Right.
but you're you become a school committee member at 7.
That's totally up to you how you want to do
Okay.
that.
Right. So,
There's kind of value. It's just like walking in at the end. Okay, hi. Yeah, like being a brand new face at the end and then interviewing.
However you want to do it.
so the 4 stakeholder groups that we mentioned, you all agree are all important. So teachers, we have to have them, teacher staff, central office leadership team, definitely, right? One-on-one with the superintendent, you do want to do that. And then we have to have the community. So that would include students, parents.
I would say I would think the students would kind of need to be part of the school day to some degree, because I feel like it's hard to have students come at 6 o'clock if they have sports or they have whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know how to schedule that. I don't
I
know.
don't know either.
yeah, I think.
That's kind of tough. You may have student council or something, but
Okay.
And then do you think like CPAC would come maybe during
During
the community
session.
time?
Yeah.
Yeah, like not have a separate, because we don't have an LPAC.
you don't have I don't think you have time.
No.
I don't know what time you started in the morning.
9:30.
But the building tour is also 3 hours long.
Yeah, that's a,
I don't know, does it need to say that?
see, it's interesting. I
I
very seldom did, of course, districts are bigger, but
Mhm.
I didn't do building tours. I did that, if I was this selected superintendent, then I did the building tours.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
you can-
I mean, I
you
don't
can
think
do
it's,
what you
we only
want,
have 4
but
buildings, so
that's my
I don't think it's gonna take that long.
But you have to prioritize.
Yeah.
What's the most important here? Is it the building tours, or, you have that community component you want to get in as well?
Yeah. I mean, maybe we could bump the whole schedule up a little earlier if, I think our building tours could be brief. Like it doesn't have to be walking around to every classroom and meeting every staff member. It would be more like, here are the 4 buildings, and Shaker Lane is gonna be replaced and,
I think there's value in even, I guess there is some degree, there's even value in going to Shaker Lane to some degree.
yeah, oh,
Yeah.
yeah. But this is a small town. It's not like
Right.
other districts where you're driving across the city to get to another
Yeah.
school. So,
Through the school.
It is, I'm not saying to eliminate it altogether because we are being interviewed as much as we are interviewing.
Mhm.
And you have to feel the school day. Like you just have to walk through it and feel it. So don't take that out altogether. I was just questioning whether it needs 3 hours.
Yeah, I
And
think it
the
can be shorter.
conversations with staff, is then the hope that like staff from all the schools can come together? Or is it like do a building tour, a conversation with few staff there, do a building tour, a conversation with few staff there? You know, like, is there a way to break that?
I think it's hard for the staff to make themselves available if they
Right.
have students in the
Right.
building, because if there's a need for that to
Oh,
supervise and
I see.
educate.
so that's after
Right.
school.
Yes.
Okay.
And there's language in the contract.
Right, so my understanding was candidate arrives, they would visit all 4 schools, it's like a half an hour apiece. Lunch gets slipped in somewhere. As the school day wraps up, we have a session available to the teachers, staff members to meet with this individual. They would then take a dinner break. There would then be like a 6 o'clock session that would be the catch-all, would be called community. It's parents, students, other organizations that have special interest in Littleton Public Schools. And then at 7 o'clock, we basically call together our meeting and have our interview.
And are those open, like the teachers in the community, are those open to like anybody in the community can come and just like sort of fire off questions?
No, they can't ask questions, but they're observers.
At the
Right, but what
community
is
one.
the-
Oh, at the community, I thought you meant at the interview.
No, at the community.
At the community one, yes. At the school one, ideally, it would be at the conclusion of the school day. Buildings are still like to some degree locked because there's students in the building. So that would probably be a staff only opportunity. It would be difficult to be letting the true public into the building at that point in time,
Yeah.
especially since there's an opportunity for the public later that evening.
Agreed.
So I think it's nice to have a dedicated staff,
Mhm.
and that would be essentially like 20 minutes after supervisory duties end at Shaker Lane. Everyone would probably come over to the high school.
Is it typical to have a completely open community forum as opposed to like a student panel, a parent panel, an educator panel? Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
somebody is standing here and literally anybody in the community is just sort of coming up and like firing,
Typically-
that's.
Typically, there's.
Yeah, I think it's 6, like if it was a 1 hour time block. At 6 o'clock, the candidate addresses who's in the room, makes like sort of opening remarks, introduction, talks. And then there's like, an opportunity for 45 minutes of Q&A. And if it's 30 minutes, there's like this awkward pause where the individual can take a breath, and then we start at 7 o'clock. But if the questions are coming fast and furious at, 6:55, we gotta turn the session off because we gotta transition into our school committee meeting at 7 o'clock.
I do wonder if, I assume at that point, Alicia's probably gonna facilitate that portion. I don't know exactly how it'll go.
Yeah.
We could say something like, we wanna make sure that, we can almost call on students, like, I don't want students to feel like they don't get the opportunity in the sense that, I feel like, or different groups get a chance, right? Just, doesn't mean it's the whole time, it's just, hey, we got 45 minutes to go, or sorry, we have 15 minutes to go, or 45 minutes in, we haven't heard from this group, just wanna give you a chance. I think that might be a good way to kind of.
Maybe
balance
there's
it.
like a form in which that groups or individuals could, sign up to ask a question ahead of time. So
That's
we
great.
make sure that we, just like with the screening committee, we made sure that there's some representation
Right.
across the community. In the event that it's a packed house, we could make sure that some individuals are heard and then go to the general public.
That's my only thought, yeah.
Yeah, we can, I mean, Alicia's gonna be facilitating this, so we can ask her what her strategies are for that.
But I think if we sort of had the school day plus a block for the teachers, and then allow a break for dinner and, allow the candidates to recharge, then they see the community and then they see us, and then they're all
Yeah.
done by 9. I'm sorry, all done by 8.
So again, not trying to dive into debate, but if we are in all agreement that we want to give the candidate a break for dinner, is that good with everyone?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's good with
Yeah.
me.
I took notes on the document, to consider maybe having the community session before the dinner break. And then the dinner break can be like the get your thoughts together moment before the interview.
If the community can come 5 to 6.
Right, I mean,
Okay.
this is not, it's not a requirement, like people who can make it will make it and people who don't can.
Also,
Right before.
the candidates, the 3 finalists, if you can swing it, would meet with the high school students, that's all. Or a group of students that John selects. I mean,
Yeah,
you don't need 100 students, 10, There's plenty that they're representative of the school. Then you
Yeah.
Get a kind of student flavor.
Okay, I'll add that on.
Class officers and.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's great.
I think that sounds right, Elaine, is to take the break 6 to 7.
Yeah.
That's smart.
okay.
And all of these also could be 45 minutes, because you're going right up to the hour. You might want to do, 1:30 to 2:15, 4 to 4:45.
Yeah.
5 to 5:45. Just give yourself the 15 minutes,
True.
even to transition between each.
Yeah, great.
Great ideas.
Awesome. So I guess we can keep kind of iterating on that. I think we have some good notes here. And we'll kind of come back with what we do as kind of final pitch. We can debate that. We have some time here. Applications will close tomorrow at 3:00. We already have some applicants. So we do have a pool of candidates already. Haven't got to look at them. We'll start the screening committee. We'll start reviewing that. We'll probably get something around 5:00 tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we'll start reviewing that on March 5th. Screening committee will get together. We'll decide on uniform questions and we'll decide who we want to do a semifinals interview with. And then as we talked about kind of through mid-March, we will hold those interviews. I'm not sure if we'll need 4 dates. If we need 3, we can, again, we've talked about this, we can adjust that date. As of right now, we're holding the 23rd of March as a day to have kind of an overview from Alicia and to go through the slate. And then from there, we've all talked and kind of that last week of March, first week of April, we'll do the interviews, 3 to 4 days in a row, and then we'll vote on April 9th, our final viewpoint on that. Elaine, if I forget anything, jump in, but obviously after the 3rd or 4th final interview goes through, we will put up all the interviews online so that everyone in the community can see them. We don't want, again, to have candidates be able to see the questions in advance. And then we will have a survey that goes along with that. Likely that survey will close. Did we decide, was it Monday? So that it was either Monday or Tuesday following. I can get back on that. But the idea being that Alicia has enough time to kind of gather it and package it and send it to us so we can actually evaluate it and not get the last minute. I did want to highlight, I know it's again kind of communications, but if Justin and Kelly are okay with the website, you're welcome to look at it again before you give final say, but just to put it up, we can talk tomorrow, whatever, but just.
I'll do another look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just whenever you're ready. And that we get that to the public, just again, that will have a lot of information and we'll continue to iterate on it as we get more information.
Is the meeting on the 23rd over, is it virtual?
It'll be virtual, yeah. Yeah, to make everyone's life easier. We can debate what's better for time and whatnot, but the idea is that will be a quick meeting. So it just allows Alicia to now start scheduling things.
My question, not to be answered now, is
Yeah.
just the dinner break.
Sure.
The way that the schedule works now is it would be like community dinner break and then school committee. I mean, I think it'd be great to have dinner with the individual, but I don't know how we would circumvent like an open meeting law violation with the 5 of us having dinner with the individual. But maybe you could think through who might have dinner with that individual or what dinner would we provide? Because I certainly don't want to just be like, okay, you're at the high school at 5 o'clock and it's like, we'll see you at,
Dunce is right there.
yeah, we'll see you in, 2 hours. Good luck. Here's a voucher.
Way to get to your interview.
So maybe that time, maybe they meet with student counselor, class officers, and maybe that could just be
I like that a lot.
Yeah, maybe.
like a low stress environment where it's a conversation. It can't be with us, obviously, because that would be likely a violation of open meeting law.
Definitely.
Yeah,
And we've been so careful.
yeah.
Or just
Yes.
maybe the dinner gets brought in and they have an opportunity to unwind for an hour. But I don't like the idea of an individual sitting in a room by themselves,
Yeah.
having Panera.
I don't know, for some people, that's exactly what they.
I guess
Introvert versus extrovert,
Yeah,
right?
I just suggest that you guys come up with a plan.
Could we do something where perhaps you have, like you said, student council or something for the first half hour, have dinner with them, and then you get a half hour to breathe?
Sort of whatever you guys
Not
decide.
too much.
Typically, my experience is
Please.
the 2 school committee members that were on the screening committee usually have supper or dinner.
Oh, yeah,
With-
that's right.
That's a good compromise.
And
That works.
then, in my experience, and they've I've had half an hour and 40 minutes to
Okay.
gather my thoughts, because again, this is the grand finale. And I don't think it has anything to do with introvert or extrovert. It has everything to do with, you want them to be prepared
Yeah.
and thorough when they're answering the question.
Well, you've been talked at or talking to for 8 hours. You just need 30 minutes of silence to gather your thoughts.
Yes, for sure.
And I imagine you have notes going into it that you might adjust a little bit after you talk to everyone.
Oh, definitely. It's,
Yeah.
it's part of
So you can
the
do
learning
that.
experience, during the day, so.
Yeah. How do you adapt?
I think that's a good idea, perhaps 30 minutes with just the screening committee member, or the two of you and
Yeah.
then a 30 minute.
dinner and how we're gonna get dinner in and what, and
Yeah,
other, we can talk offline about that, but
that sounds great. I appreciate that.
So the only problem with Sean and I being there would be that we would be a quorum of the subcommittee and we would have
If
to
we
post it,
Disperse.
which we could do.
But we could also
post it.
disband that committee once
Yeah.
we wouldn't need that subcommittee anymore, so we could disband that subcommittee
Does
before
it
that.
change if you sub one of us in for you on any given night? If it's
No, but
Elaine and
when
me,
we,
you're
when we
just
do the
in-
final slate,
You're right, we just
we
disband
could just
that,
disband the
and
committee
then we're done.
Okay,
and would hope that we don't have to bring the committee back.
In that case, you might want someone else.
I mean, all it would take is to go to the open meeting.
Get one and done.
Yeah, no, I know, that would be because we didn't successfully
Right,
get a candidate.
which would be a
Yeah.
disaster.
All right.
As Bino pointed out, I mean, one of us could act as host. Like,
Sure.
so,
figure it
you
out.
you can ping. You don't have to be team for everything. If it's just like, hey, we need, can you pick up this night? I don't, that makes sense.
That could work too.
Yeah, that could work too.
Let us know what you decide.
Cool.
So there was one other thing, so from the conversation at the last meeting, an
Thank you.
extended conversation about should we do district visits or
Yes.
not? And I think, upon reflection, we had a lot of concerns about consistency. If it's not the same people going to the districts, then that might not be equitable. And, so I think the takeaway, Sean and I discussed this, was that we won't do district visits. The data might not be perceived as being that valuable because there would be equity concerns. So if everyone else is comfortable with that decision, I think that's the direction we're heading.
Personally, I was very likely to be able to unmake those district visits myself, so if you folks are okay with not doing them, I'm in favor of that as well.
I think that's realistic.
Great,
Okay,
cover all our bases there?
Yep.
Thank you.
Awesome.
And I think we forgot to add you, Elaine, to that agenda. Our apologies.
no, that was on purpose.
Was it?
I think
Okay,
she.
good.
Well, just,
Actually.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
no, that was
Good.
fine.
we don't always have to have co-presenters. Sean
Yeah.
covered it, Elaine jumped in when she
That's
needed
fine.
to.
Yeah, as always.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, you know how it is.
That's good with it.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
We're moving on.
Yeah.
We're losing
We're
people.
getting delayed.
Second opportunity for interested citizens.
there's nobody online.
Seeing them.
Seeing and hearing none, we'll close that. We're gonna roll through our subcommittee reports rather quickly, but listen, we're here for all the time that you need. PMBC,
Yeah, so PMBC is still dormant. While I have here, I'll just quickly do Shaker Lane, because it's kind of related. We approved the OPM and the designer contracts at our last meeting. And then we expect, I think I said this before, but we expect to have more information on the timeline by June. As far as there's a couple of different timeline options, we'll know by then. And then I'm working on getting someone from Gilbane to join me and Mary Lee to discuss the project on the podcast when the timeline's better.
great. Next up is the budget subcommittee. I don't have anything in particular to report.
Have we
No.
said that we presented at the?
Yeah, a budget subcommittee presentation, formal presentation is, I believe it's next school committee meeting,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
so. We're in good,
But,
you
yeah,
know,
Sure.
we're putting the polishing touches on our presentation.
I sent you a draft
Yes.
of it, so.
Thank you. Policy subcommittee, we have a number of
second,
policies for the second reading. Since we've already spent some time on these, if there are any policies that we wish to revisit or question, I can hear those now, otherwise we can move through them.
I just
Any
have
in
one-
particular?
Yeah, I did, I mean, after reading them all through one more time, there was just one where I thought the language was a little confusing. It was ICA about the length of the school year. Now I gotta find it again. Oh, yeah. So we talk about, I'm not saying this language that has to be changed, but I just want to make sure I understand it. So we talk about the Mass Board of Education requiring 185 days.
At least. yes.
At least, right, but then we're talking about, you know, our elementary and our secondary schools will operate for a minimum of 180 days. So I was wondering why
It's
those are
100
different.
Excuse me, it's a 180-day school year. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has us tack on 5 snow days, so it's still 100.
Oh, that's all it
It's
is.
just the calendar versus the
Yeah.
actual school year.
Right.
Okay,
Like
yeah, and I
every-
didn't know if that
every
was
calendar-
3 days or something.
No,
Wow.
it's
So that's the snow days.
mandated by DESI, we have 5 snow days out.
Okay, that's all. I just wanted to. make sure I
My
understood
question
that.
is on the same policy, so we go ahead and say that the school committee will approve the following year's calendar by May 1st.
Mhm.
I will acknowledge, that I think that's late.
Very late.
Our practice is we did it in February.
Yeah.
Our practice is definitely do it by March. I'm just thinking, you know, there will be school committees after us and they can certainly change the policy. But do we want to make an edit here and move this up so that it is, because it's really because of the community's expectation that we have the calendar out by, I'll say March 1 or March 15.
March 30th.
March 30th, April 1.
I mean, it's by May 1st.
April Fool's Day, if we don't have,
Anytime before May 1st, we can do it, you know.
yeah,
I'm gonna move it up. I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
I got a lot of questions from parents even before we presented.
Correct.
Like if you're in contact with a parent, everyone wants to know if they can book vacations, particularly because next year we're starting before Labor Day. Everyone had questions.
yeah,
Okay.
So I just think it's good to get ahead of it.
so
What
is
did,
our practice, I'm looking at Beth too, is
Yeah,
our
what
practice
would
that we
your-
always try to address this in the month of February?
We have got, it used to be March and then we
Yes,
have
we
upped
backed
it. The only thing is that, on some years that like there's some more debate than others, we have had to, we have presented in February, but you actually all voted in March.
Yeah,
And so I would give yourselves the flexibility of March would be from past practice.
okay,
This just says will be prepared and submitted for approval. It doesn't say approved by. So if the language flexibility might already be there, just that it's presented
great point.
to the school committee by. Would be
Yeah.
approved in May because of
Yeah.
circumstances or whatever.
Right.
That is
Yeah.
not.
So do we want to say,
you want to put it to March 30th?
sure, we're moving it,
Yeah,
Yeah, those
we're
were.
moving it 31 days,
yeah.
sure.
It's a good practice because if it does end up taking 2 months, you know, God forbid you start in May, you're not gonna approve it till.
Right.
the
I
end
think
of
it
the
was
year.
smart to have the conversation about holidays in a separate meeting, because that made the school calendar conversation much shorter.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that one edit,
Yeah.
That's great.
why are we saying March 30th as opposed to April 1st?
Maybe April
Doesn't matter.
1st.
Pick April 1st. doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Whatever anyone wants.
You're just changing the format on me, like picking the last day of the month versus the first day.
Well, it just feels like it's by the end of March.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was to the beginning. $99 versus 100, that's.
30th first. 30th? All
You
right.
sold me on that, Beano.
It's March.
Justin, you really want April Fool's Day?
All right. Any other questions? Okay. Does somebody wanna, carefully make a motion that we accept those and then with the one edit for the
Sure.
one?
I'd like to move that we accept for second reading policies, HA negotiations goals, HB negotiations legal status, HF school committee negotiating agents, ICA school year, school calendar with the aforestated edit, ID school day, IGA, IGD curriculum development and adoption, IGB learning support program services, IHBD Title I supplement, not supplement policy and procedures, IHBEA English language learners.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Excellent. I have one more thing for the policy subcommittee for this.
Please, go right ahead.
Today the policy subcommittee met, and, we looked at all the, policies that we should be reviewing, up until the end of the year. And we also discussed what is happening in our committee and some of the meetings coming up, like the big budget meeting. Instead of working, and we also discussed, we are working on hiring a new superintendent who will be part of some of the conversations around policies and any policy changes. So our proposition to the committee is to put off reviewing most of the policies on our list until next September, when we have a new superintendent, with the exception of 3 policies that we pulled out that we thought were important to address soon. JFBB school choice, because we're going to be talking about school choice soon, so we want to proceed with reviewing that policy. JH school absence, and BEDG minutes. Those were 3 we looked at. We thought that those were things we might want to discuss. So our proposition to the committee is to address those, a review of those 3 policies, and to postpone the rest of the review and pick up the review cycle again next September with our new administration. What do you think?
Sounds totally fair. I'll just add that in the event that a school committee member wishes to, address a policy, bring it forward, certainly happy to entertain that and look at it on an agenda item, but I think it's totally reasonable.
There's no expectation that we had to review this. Right? I just want to check that.
That we had to what?
No.
There's no, okay.
We're just being diligent
No.
when
Yeah.
a certain number of years has passed to
Yeah.
to send them.
We did take a look. Everything has been reviewed since 2020. We are working to review them every 3 years. We are a little bit behind in that goal, but we have, several dozen that we have reviewed in the past 2 years. So, we are coming close to being up to date, and we can, move a little faster maybe next fall. We just thought that it just feels kind of thoughtful of a new administration to move forward. And also, like, our agenda is really full from now to the end of the year.
No, I agree with that. I just want to make sure we're
Yeah.
covering anything that was.
Yeah.
Great.
So those were the things that we talked about. We were like, maybe that's, I just wanted to bring it to the committee and see what you thought. Cause I'm happy to keep going forward, but it's like squeezing them in all the time, as opposed to having the opportunity to really sit and discuss things if we find some wording that we want to talk about.
Well, thank you both for your thoughtfulness on that.
Yeah.
Today I wasn't there.
So that all sounds good. I'll add, I had a conversation with an administrator in another school district today, talking about the superintendent search and what was on tonight's agenda and stuff. And they were like, that's so interesting, because those are like really big initiatives, specific what they are both, but the portrait of a learner. And they were like, your superintendent's predecessor, like, might think that that's not like the direction the district needs to move in. And then after tonight's conversation with how engaged we all are and what a wonderful job we're doing, I think we need to make sure that the objective of the portrait of a learner is involved in this interview process.
Oh, yeah, good point.
100%.
I don't know if it's going to be, one of our 6 questions, or if it's going to be subcommittee level, or if it's going to be part of, it probably needs to be addressed, because there's such an initiative, there's such momentum here.
Yeah.
We certainly wouldn't want somebody coming in being like, well, I forgot the job now. That's I don't wish to carry that forward.
Thank you for
It's a great
pointing
point.
that idea.
Yeah. So
Did we talk about that in in what we put out into the world? Asking for people to apply? Did we talk about our curriculum?
whether we did or didn't, we still want to hear from the candidates what their belief system is on that, and what their work has been, if any, applicable to those initiatives. So
100%.
Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I believe that in the next few years, DESI will get everyone to some sort of version of it.
Yes, it's not gonna catch you off
But-
guard, but.
That was my point. I
Yeah.
think regardless if we put it in the brochure or not, all candidates are expecting to do this at some point in their
Yeah.
tenure.
I mean, isn't it, Kelly, to what John was saying earlier, that it was part of the NEASC accreditation
It is.
process?
It is.
So every
Very
high
special.
school is gonna encounter this process.
Thank
And
you.
it's just up to the
Yeah.
district whether they want to
And I would-
articulate it to K
Yeah,
to
and I
12.
would also ask the candidate about UDL.
Mhm.
That's a pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cemented,
Yeah.
transition.
Yeah.
So, and even if they don't know that much about it, at least they're aware and they will.
Yeah.
Read up on it.
Mhm.
Yeah. I agree completely to that, Justin.
Yeah, great point.
We need to start referring to Porter Learner with an acronym so that it.
POL,
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
You know,
Yeah,
What
Have to have
does
acronyms.
it stand?
have to.
the D,
All right,
UDL.
we're getting silly because it's late.
Universal Design for Learning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any other old business or new business before the school committee?
No.
Hearing none, I'll announce that our next school committee meeting, not to be missed, it's March 12th, 2026. It is the official budget hearing, which will take place at 7 o'clock at the Littleton Police Station.
Do your
Right.
homework and listen to the podcast.
Yeah, that may have also been covered in the podcast. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Made,
Second.
second, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We have adjourned.
Thank you.
Yeah.